Buenos and half a day. The Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor Procurement, Statistics, Research and Planning is calling this roundtable hearing to order. It's regarding removal of junk and abandoned vehicles, current process, barriers, and potential solutions. It is now 3:05 p.m. on Thursday, April 20th, 2023. In compliance with open government law, notices of today's hearing were published in the Guam Daily Post and provided via email to senators, stakeholders, local media, and posted on the Government of Guam Public Notices website, as well as the Guam Legislature website. On Thursday, April 13th for the 5-day notice, and Tuesday, April 18th for the 48-hour notice. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me here today, Senator Joe San Agustin and Senator Chris Duenas. Thank you for being here. The purpose of this roundtable is to identify barriers and potential solutions to coordinate efforts to address the growing problem of abandoned junk vehicles. In fiscal year 2022, Guam EPA, in collaboration with the mayors, through the Mayor's Island-wide environmental cleanup program, resulted in the removal of 650,000 tires, 2,000 abandoned junk vehicles, and over 1,000 white goods, with the estimated cost of $1.2 million. Despite these efforts, abandoned junk vehicles continue to pose a significant public safety and environmental hazard, and one of the concerns expressed at the recent town hall meeting in Dedido, in which a prompt response is needed. The committee invited key stakeholders today who can contribute individually to solve these problems, but more importantly, we can coordinate our efforts to effectively remove abandoned junk vehicles once and for all, I hope. Additionally, the purpose of today's meeting is to provide information to the public and increase awareness of the proper disposal of abandoned junk vehicles and to garner support from our community. With the passage of the Zero Waste Act, recycling revolving funds can be used for the interim storage for these vehicles and for contracting of removal of junk vehicles through the Department of Public Works. I look forward to our ensuing dialogue and developing a shared path forward. So I'd like to acknowledge all of you that have joined here today, and I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can develop a plan and implement it as soon as possible. So we did invite members from Guam EPA. We have the Administrator Walter Leon Guerrero, who's here today, Deputy Administrator Michelle Lastimosa. We have members of the board, Chairman Stephen Carbolito, who's on the board of directors, and we have Stephen Hollister, I think, who is on the board as well. We also have members from the Mayor's Council. We have the President of the Mayor's Council and also Mayor of PD, Mayor Jesse Alec. We have Mayor of Dedido, Mayor Melissa Savaras. We have the Mayor of Inalahan, Mayor Anthony Chargaloff. The Mayor of MTM, Mamong Totomaiti, Rudy Paco. And Molesso, Mayor of Molesso, Ernest Chargaloff. If there are any other mayors here today, please let me know. We also have, from the Office of the Attorney General, Special Project Coordinator, Mr. Harvey Egna. We have the department director from the Department of Revenue and Taxation, Director Daphne Shimazu. We also invited the Guam Economic Development Authority, members from that the agency, as well as the Guam Police Department, and the Chamorro Land Trust as well. I believe the Director of Department of Public Works is on his way, and so we look forward to his contribution. Is there anyone else? Oh yes, and Mr. St. Nicholas, he was at the town hall on Friday last week, and we're glad that you're able to make it today. Is there anyone else that would like to come to the table? Oh, Mr. Lozama, would you like to join? You're good? Okay. All right, so we did send questions. I sent questions ahead just to kind of jumpstart the discussion. And so maybe what we can have is I could just pose the questions and we can have members voluntarily provide information. So one of the questions that I started off with is if you can maybe talk about what is your role, what is your role and what is your authorities in removal of abandoned and junk vehicles, And perhaps we can start with Guam EPA.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you,
sorry.
Senators.
Just for transcription purposes, if everyone can just identify their names and their organization. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Walter Leangaro. I'm with Guam EPA. The question about our regulatory oversight, it's actually 10 GCA Chapter 51, Article 1, which gives us the ability to regulate and provide oversight for solid waste, and that encompasses abandoned vehicles, more specifically Public Law 36115, which is the administration of the Recycling Revolving Fund. That's one part. A separate part is the planning of the Recycling Revolving Fund use. And another part is the Mayor's Council of Guam plan that we approve when we provide them money. So that's some of the regulatory oversight that Guam EPA has for the abandoned vehicle issue on Guam. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I would like to turn over to Director Shimizu.
Thank you so much, Senator Perez. And so the Department of Revenue and Taxation actually isn't formally involved in the abandoned vehicle removal process until after the vehicle is removed and stored. And so where we get involved, and the section of the law that we utilize as a basis for that is Title 16, or 16 GCA, Chapter 3, Section 3606. And there are three sections in that particular section of the law, or three places where DRT gets involved. Number one, and of course you did provide, this was the information and guidance that was issued by the AG's office in December 2021. And so if you refer to the attachment, which is 16 GCA in section 3606B, C, which states that, of course, Rev and Tax will get involved when there is a notice. There is a notice requirement to the owners or the last owners of the vehicle. That's the first section of the law and the first area that we that addresses what our roles are. Also, once it is determined that the vehicle is going to be or has not been claimed by an individual, then it's the department's responsibility as per the law to appraise the vehicle. And if the vehicle is appraised at a value not exceeding $100, if the vehicle is appraised at a value exceeding $100, then DRT may sell such vehicle at a public sale. And so those are the three sections or the three areas that DRT gets involved in, and again, the law or the section of the law that we refer to for that guidance is 16 GCA, Chapter 3, Section 3606. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director. I'd like to recognize Senator Barnett. Thank you for being here. And my apologies, Mayor, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Council, Angel Saban. My apologies for that. And Director Ariola, is there anyone else? Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so I guess we start off with the first question as far as, what is your involvement in the removal of abandoned junk vehicles? And so I guess maybe if I could follow up a question with you, Director Shimizu. To your knowledge, to what extent has DRT been involved in, have you been called out, or what is the frequency with which DRT has assessed these vehicles?
And so we actually, since I've been at the Department of Revenue and Taxation, I have not actually been requested for the information for the purpose of I guess, addressing the issue of abandoned vehicles. So I have not seen this occur. And again, I believe that the AG's opinion did come out, sorry, it's not the AG's opinion, but it's an information and guidance that was provided to the Mayor's Council of Guam, actually was issued in December 2021. So we have not seen this particular process occur.
So I know this was brought up before, and I guess maybe that's one of the things we need to examine here today is why is it not being, why is DRT not being sought for, coming out and assessing vehicles. So maybe we'll just move down the line, but just keep that thought. Okay, Director Arreola, thank you for being here. So I guess the question that I was posing is, what is your role and involvement in removal of abandoned junk vehicles?
Thank you, Senator. My apologies for being late, but basically my role follows DRT. As the director at DRT just enumerated with 5 GCA, we're kind of like the last resort where we pick up the cars, and there's supposed to be a so-called like a garage or a staging area, things of that nature. But you know, we've been tackling this for the last couple months, and all the agencies here with the mayors, last several years with the mayors. And this is my take. You know, I just came from a resolution presentation up at the Guam Raceway Park. And so I went from Laddie Heights to the Raceway Park, which was about a 2-mile ride. And I knew I was coming to this hearing, so I said, let me just, because I heard there's a lot of junk cars there. I counted over 12 just in that 2-mile stretch. You know, I think even if we pass all the laws and we pass all the rules and regulations, I think if every mayor here had a tow truck, they'd be using it every single day. Because it's at that point where folks just take their cars and dump it on the side of the road, or they just leave it in the front of their house until it becomes nothing. And so it's certainly not cultural. So rather than getting into all this stuff, I think we need to get to the root of the problem. Why are people just keeping their cars and then dumping it on the side of the road? You know, you asked for suggestions. I think if it's no different than if we had dump sites or transfer stations. People would go there and throw their trash. There's no transfer stations, and they have to pay $30-some to throw their trash. So guess where they throw it? They throw it in the jungles. No different than the cars. I think if the government's going to do something, we've been doing that too. We're trying to find some land, probably a 10-acre site, where we can just stage the cars until we can get it to a recycler, because the government's not in the business of recycling it or selling it to Taiwan, Korea, Japan, or any of the Eastern countries that takes scrap metal. But I think we just have to give the residents of Guam a place to put their junk car, burn car, or wherever, as opposed to putting it at a park or whatever. The only other solution I could think to stopping this is similar to what the law says. You find out who's the last registered owner. And I think I've said this before. You find out who the last registered owner is, and if we have to pick it up and stage it, I get the VIN number, I get the license plate number, I send it to DRT, and DRT puts it and red flags it, and if you try to register another vehicle, you go buy a new car, guess what? You're not going to be able to do it. It's no different than similar to the banks. If you get foreclosed on a loan, you're not getting another loan. And so you just have to make it stick. You get caught throwing out dumping a vehicle on the side of the road, you get fined $1,000 and go pick up trash for the next 60. You gotta make it really strong, because these people that dump cars out there, they just don't. They don't care. You can do whatever you want. They're gonna dump it. And I think the more we pick it up, I think the mayors will agree with me, the more you pick it up, the more they're gonna dump. That's why I don't do trash-a-thons, personally. I just don't. I'm not going to pick up someone else's trash, and they're going to go there and just dump it again because, let's just dump our trash because it's so clean out there. The more you pick it up, the more they're going to dump it. And I have to imagine the mayors are going to agree with me, because that's just the way it works. So, you know, if we're looking for a recommendation, I think stiff fines, hard labor for these people. Go out there and cut tangan with a dull machete for 30, 60 days, and you know, and I think we definitely need a site. You need a site to store these cars, and right now we don't have a site. I've offered DPW for a maximum of 14 days. We have our backside there, but we can't store cars there for longer than 14 days. We'll be full in 14 days if the mayors came with all their junk cars, right? I have to imagine that. Yeah, so that's kind of where we stand. What we're doing is we're being reactive right now. We got to find a way to make these people stop dumping their old cars on the side of the road.
All right, thank you for that impassioned testimony. So I think on that note, I would like to turn to the mayors. I know mayors, thank you so much for all your efforts to assist with the removal of abandoned junk vehicles. And so the purpose of this roundtable is to really kind of coordinate everybody's efforts so that we can, not make it solve this issue, I think. So Mayor, maybe we'll just start from, okay, President, okay.
Thank you, Senator. I think we want to back Director Arreola up because that's how we feel for the most part. It's the enforcement or the lack of enforcement. We are peace officers, but there's certainly at least only so much we can do. We can remove a vehicle, but we're only going to stage it somewhere, but there's no staging site. So if we remove a vehicle and we dispose it, who's liable for it, right? And that's the issue that we have as well. So most of us are equipped with the funding from the Recycling Revolving Fund, which we're grateful for, but our hands are tied because, for the most part, you need a signature to remove that vehicle, and if you don't have it, you need to store it. According to the write-up that we received from the AG's office, from the previous AG, we need to store it at a staging site, which we don't have, and most of us mayors have been asking for that site, and so that's. I'll give my colleagues a chance to weigh in as well because they'll have much more to say. But for the most part, we agree with the lack of enforcement or the need to enforce and have stricter fines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Alec. So Mayor Savaras.
Mayor Savaras from Dedido. And I understand, the Director Arreola, his sentiments, because I've always said for years, I've said you remove it and when it rains hard 2 days later, they're growing from the same spot. But, when EPA fines $1,000, $500 for illegal dumping, they're fining to people that can't even afford to pay attention, okay? So we have stiffer fines I'd put them in jail. We've did an analysis of this where why do these cars keep coming up? And a mechanic in a neighborhood, which they shouldn't be, we've been telling people, this is an R1 zone, R1, one single dwelling for your family. M1 zones is where you can go to fix these cars. This neighborhood is not an R1 zone. In order to fix one car for this mechanic, they bring 10 other cars in, a minimum of 10 other cars, and they get all the stuff. Then when they're done with all the parts, retrieving the parts, they put it there. But they put it in front of other neighbors. I have a problem in Liguan Terrace. It's a neighborhood that's really tight. They love each other because their houses are so close, but when you put outside of your easement, outside of your driveway, and then you put next to that, you're in front of the neighbor's driveway. My other problem areas, Chamorro Land Trust properties. I spoke to Ms. Alice Tyron a few days ago because an individual has lease for residential, an individual has lease for agricultural. The ones that have leases for agricultural are growing tires and cars. I don't know how else to do it. I've come here to this body before and asked for an increase on the procurement cap because you can't procure anything with over 50,000. Now we're up to 75,000, but that's 75,000 with the increase of fees that we have to pay just to bring it to the recycler is not enough for me to at least move 300 cars. So if we increase make the fines stiffer, what is it going to, these people cannot pay for that. We need to say, okay, everybody that wants to work on cars, we're going to give you a section behind DPW or in Tizen, and you can repair your cars when you're done. This is where you put it at MTM because he has a staging area. But, it's taking it out of the neighborhoods. And you can give them a little cubicle that they can put their tools and secure at night and do the work there. But it doesn't do us any justice when you're doing it in R1 zones where you have children. People know that in Derrida we pick up around the school areas, near bus stops. Where are the cars when we clear it up an area? It's near the bus stop and along the school areas. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cervaras. Executive Director Angel Sablan.
We can go on days and weeks about this subject, as we have for many, many years. First off, I don't think that the mayors should be in the business of collecting junk or abandoned vehicles, simply put. But we have been ever since. The thing is, the current statute that governs abandoned vehicles and junk vehicles is not enforceable. First off, it says that Gov Guam should have an impound lot. I don't know how difficult it is to get an impound lot, but for all these years, we've never been able to secure an impound lot. GPD has had their own for cars that they have to use to store for evidence. DPW, once upon a time, had one, and the cars are just rotted there. My thinking is we already have how many junkyards on Guam that are duly licensed and permitted by EPA? Why can't we not just contract those junkyards to be the receivers of these vehicles that are on easements, that are on roadsides, that need to be removed? And when it comes time for payment, whoever owns that car, you better pay up for the towing and the storage, or else you're not going to get your car back. But what happens now? Today is Thursday. We leave the car there. GPD takes the license plate. Tomorrow, there's no more tires on that vehicle. On Saturday, the windshields are all cracked. And maybe Sunday, if they feel like having a barbecue, they burn the car. A perfectly good car is destroyed. Do we have ways to trace it? Yeah, we get the VIN number, but we've already asked GPD, please, if you pull over this car, if you're going to take the license plate, at least call the mayor's office and say, hey, we have this car that was parked in front of the Barrigada post office. License plate so-and-so, we're taking the license plate. We're letting you be aware that it's there. 2 weeks ago, a perfectly white Explorer was sitting in front of the post office across the National Guard. It sat there for 3 days. Then it's sitting on blocks after about a week. Somebody comes, takes the catalytic converter. So even if we wanted to enforce these abandoned vehicles, junk vehicles, we cannot. So the mayors are forced to put a notice on the vehicle that you have 24, 48 hours to remove this vehicle. If not, we're taking it. We're taking it to the nearest or to the permitted processing centers. And right now, while we have more than 2, we are only dealing with 2 because the 2 are the only ones that will accept Governor Guam purchase order. And that's Global and SD Recycling. And so we bring the car there. We just bless it because we never know where that car is going to go or what's going to happen to it after it's sent there. Obviously, we think that it's being cubed up and put in a container and sent off island to be sold somewhere or to be processed somewhere. Same thing with tires. We talk about abandoned vehicles, we talk about tires. We collect tires every time we put out a purchase order. It's come to the point where our only tire recycling center on Guam, Guahan Waste Control, he told me last week that he probably has to stop doing this because he's not making any money. And if I can find somebody else that wants to take over that business of his or to open a business for tire recycling, please let him know, because he's more than willing to sell it, even if he's not going to make money. On white goods, refrigerators, stove, air cons, TVs. TVs are electronics, but water heaters and all that. As soon as they see somewhere that, oh, somebody's collecting, they start appearing on front of the houses in the villages, even though it hasn't been announced. Even though our residents are allowed by Guam Solid Waste, which they're paying a fee to pick up these items, I think, twice a year, they don't do it. Why? ATM. Ask the mayor, because they're going to come and pick it up. And so, like I said, we've been going through this whole rigmarole of what should we do, how should we do it. People are even having the mentality that, hey, I already paid when I registered my car, I paid an abandoned vehicle fee. Why should I go now and be the one to go take it to the junkyard? That's your responsibility, government. I paid you already. And if I have to pay that registration 4 or 5 times the life of that vehicle, that's $125, whatever, $150 that I've paid. Why are you then asking me again to pay for this thing? And so you go to the airport, and you see vehicles there that are just left there. I don't know where the keys, but they're there, and they're probably going to imagine who left the cars there. It's probably our military that left the island and didn't sell the car. Just leave it there. Or they just park it anywhere they want to. Because, like I said, they've already paid, they're assuming they already paid a fee. Why am I going to go again and try to find a way to dispose of this vehicle? We've gotten cars. We're never going to end collecting abandoned vehicles. I live in Worcester Road. Just last week, the mayor's office collected 3 cars that were sitting on the side of the road, no tires. After they collected those 3 cars, guess what? The very next day, a purple RAV4 still had tires on it, right next to Marine Corps Drive and Woodstick, was dumped there, parked there. Today, it's still sitting there, but it's sitting on blocks. And I asked the vice mayor, you're going to come and get it? He even checked the VIN, had it traced, person is deceased. So what do we do? Of course, we're going to have to take the vehicle. But most of the vehicles now that we're collecting, because we've been collecting cars over the years, most of the cars that we're now collecting are burnt-out cars. You cannot even recognize them. They're just shells. But we have to take it because people that are living on Chamorro Land Trust property are not getting smart. They're pulling it out and putting it on the side of the road. You go to Iseng Road. DPW director mentioned the back road. Yeah, he's correct. There's cars upon cars on that back road. And the big question is, how do they get there? There are no tires on these vehicles. And there's also no track marks on the road. If it's dragged by another car, then those tracks would be shown on the road, but it doesn't. So it makes us think that somebody who has a trailer or are in cahoots with the towing companies are pulling this out in the middle of the night and dumping it on the side of the road. Why? Because maybe these towing companies think, oh, here's another $250 car that I'm going to get paid for if I just leave it here and I ask the mayor of Manila to come and use his PO to pick it up. Right now, it's $400 a car, senators. $250, depending if you're in the south, $200 if you're in the central area or the north, to pull this vehicle. So it's now $600 to $650 a vehicle to process and dispose of. We started out 10 years ago with $50. In fact, 10 years ago, the processing centers were buying the cars. We took it to them and they paid us for the vehicle. Now we're paying them $400. And I can't blame them, because if we say no and they say no, where are we going to put the vehicles? Where are they going to go? If the haulers say, I'm not going to tow that car for $50, and all of them say no, what are we going to do? So we're bound by not just economics, but these guys too need to make money. We don't want them to to lose money. But it's going up, and I don't know, maybe next year it's going to go up to $500. I really don't know. And even they are saying it's come to a point that if the market in Asia, where they send all these things, are dead, then they're going to not collect these cars anymore because they're not going to be able to process them and make any money. So I'm glad that we're here. We work very well with EPA. We're very thankful for the funding that they give us. The only thing that our hands are tied with is when this legislature appropriates money from the Guam Recycling Fund under the EPA's funding appropriation, you put a provision in there that before they release that money, we have to come up with a operations plan, an MOU, which we do every year. The thing is, that has to go to the Attorney General's office. And sometimes it takes more than a month to get it out of the Attorney General's office. Just this last year, we sent in the MOA in October. It didn't come out till a few days before Levin Camacho was to leave office. So it sat there. Then when we get it back, it has to go to the governor, it has to go to DOA, it has to be uploaded and everything. By the time I'm able to start giving out purchase orders, it's already another 30 days after we get that approval. Now we're into February. So we're into March now and April. We started collecting the abandoned vehicles and the tires and the white goods and the electronics. We've already encumbered the $1 million that EPA released to us in January. We've already encumbered the total amount. We're waiting for the other 500,000, but because they're wanting us to deobligate the amount of money in FY22, which amounts to around $300,000, which is causing us some heartache because DOA has come up with this new policy that they will not close out any account until every purchase order is signed and documented, that there'll be no longer any payments associated with that purchase order. And so we have thousands of purchase orders. Could you imagine one person sitting there trying to certify that these purchase orders are no longer to be used for? And the irony is, that money cannot be used by the Mayor's Council of Guam anyway. It expired on September 30th. If there's 400,000 sitting there after September 30th, we cannot spend one penny of that money. But of course, EPA is waiting for that money to go back to them, to be deobligated. And the only people that can deobligate it is DOA. And until they finish all their accounting, we're at their mercy, even though we've already reported to the EPA that we've closed out our purchase orders. We cannot deobligate the amount that has to go back to them, which leads me to maybe propose something that this legislature can do, much like they do with the limited gaming tax. Funds that are appropriated under the recycling fund to the Mayor's Council Guam shall not lapse until fully expended. That way, that $300,000 that's sitting there right now, we can still use it. Instead of waiting again until before we get funds back, we can it's for the same purpose, it's for the same reason. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be spent doing something else. So that's just, I don't know whether EPA would agree to it, but that's one of the ways I've seen other funding sources are done, is that they do not lapse until fully expended. They stay with that agency for the same purpose it was appropriated for in the first place. And this other thing about, thank you that you gave us Senator Primo, the exemption to raise it up to 75,000. You know, we were at 25,000 when we initially did this, then we went to 50. Now we're at 75,000. Heck, why don't we just remove the cap? Because some of these villages, like Dededo and Jigo, they've got more than 187 cars that they have to remove. And 187 cars is very, very close to 75,000. And I cannot, once they exhaust that, cannot increase that purchase order to them unless I get it from another funding source, which is not the recycling fund. Or I give it to another vendor, which is not the vendor that they get originally. So that's another proposal. Just remove the cap. We all know that the vehicles are out there, all this recyclable stuff are out there. Why put a cap? We're going to use it anyway. And so, going back to the thing, and you heard the Director of Revenue and Tax, she's never heard of anybody requesting to evaluate or appraise any vehicles. Who's going to appraise a burnt vehicle? We're wasting our time. Take it and give it to the process. Let them. Nobody's going to come and buy it. Maybe what Revenue and Tax should do is go around to all these places in the villages that have these chop shops. And you know who they are. They're very, very obvious. There's one on Rustic Road sitting right there. You can't have 10 cars and with all their hoods up, and you think that there's nothing going on there? Do they have a license to operate? Is the government making any money from them? Maybe that's one of the ways too, is to stop this. And what do they do after they chop the vehicle up? They take it up 300 feet down the road and dump it there. Because Mrs. Savara's mayor is going to come pick it up, or Mr. Tony Sanchez is going to come pick it up, depending on which side of Woostic Road it's on. So maybe instead of appraising these no-good vehicles that are worthless in the first place, go and appraise those places where they're chopping these cars up. And let's start charging them for a business license, for a permit, so that they can start, or I don't know, or maybe if they're going to get a business license, how many cars are you going to chop in a year? 25. So charge them $100 per car, $2,500 for that license. And let's see if they'll bite. But like I said, every village has chop shops. We've got to put a stop to that. It's okay if these chop shops take the vehicles after they dismantle it and take it to the processing center, but they don't. That's why you see all these cars in Chamorro Land Trust property where nobody's planting or nobody's living, because they bring it in there and they put it in there. I got a call yesterday from a lady that lives up there in Taguactac Road in Jigo. She goes, I just came to my property yesterday and I checked it. Today when I came here, there's a car outside. I called the police and GP said, take the VIN number. The lady goes, I'm not going to touch the car. I don't even know what's in it or who's in it. Please don't ask me to, you come and you check the car if it's stolen or what. Well, the police never came. So the lady called us up, say, please, Mr. Sablan, can you ask the mayor of Jigo to come and pick up that car? Because I don't know who it belongs to. I was here yesterday, today there's a car there. And she's afraid that somebody may have stolen that car and just dumped it there. So it's a whole gamut of things really that we have to go through. And some of these mayors will tell you that we try to help our residents. We pick up a car, and then tomorrow they still have another car that they bring in from I don't know where. Mayor Del Alvarez from Santa Rita asked me to bring this up. There's a resident in Hyundai there in Santa Rita. He has over 20 cars. One house, 20 cars. He needs somebody to help him to remove those cars. I don't know whether EPA can come and cite the homeowners or whatever, but even if he took 2 cars away, there's still 18 cars left. The mayor of Manila just called me this morning and said, Angel, Chief, I want to help this one house they have 8 cars, but my money is not enough to go and take care of all my residents. So I just tell them, I'll take one of your cars so that I can be able to go to the other residents and assist them as well. Because if I take all your 8 cars, that's 7 more houses that I cannot go and assist because I took all of your 8. Of course, there's no limit. And I know Sabrina from EPA is here and helps us, and sometimes she wonders when we put all the data on those log sheets and she sees that all the cars come from the same house on the same road, she questions because did you guys really pick up 8 vehicles in that one house? And it's true. I mean, mayors are not going to put their names, certify invoices if they know it's not true. So, like I said, we can, I'm glad we're starting this, we can talk about this, but we really got to refine. The big thing is the current statute is unenforceable and does not work. And we are breaking the law. Bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director, for your insight. And so we'll continue the discussion. Mayor of Inalahan, Mayor Chargaloff.
Okay, first of all, I'm still really trying to understand the whole process. I'm still fairly new, but let me tell you at least what my observations are. Quite honestly, my whole, I firmly believe that everything should be targeted right back at the original owner. And so here's some of my proposals I would do. Number one, of course, every legitimate car owner is entitled to an abandoned, or they pay their abandoned vehicle fee. Number one, I don't know what the current fee is today, but I believe we should up that number up to represent what they're currently charging at $400. Of course, so you're gonna have these legitimate owners and you're gonna have these reckless owners, and then you're gonna have the police. So let me just share with you what I've observed. When the police pulls over a vehicle for whatever the case may be, expired license plate, whatever, they would pull those plates away and leave it abandoned right on the side of the road. Again, I think the police have got to come up with some mechanism of how to get that road properly stored, whether an impound lot or whatever. I know there's a challenge with that, but nonetheless, I believe the police have a responsibility in that regard to not just leave the vehicle there. As a responsible car owner, and of course, even at the chop shops, for my suggestion also is that every time the car is sold to a new owner, that you still impose that same fee. If it's sold 10 times over, then that fee gets implemented 10 times over. But here's one of the proposals I have, because obviously this has kind of been on the backs of the mayors, and how do we get the mayors out of this? And so here's my proposal. My proposal is, because EPA is the holder of the monies here, what I propose is that EPA comes up with 2 vouchers. One of them would be directed strictly to a tow company, and the next one would be over to the receiver of the cars or the recycler. So I'm going to give you a scenario. If my car breaks down and I've decided already that I no longer want it, that I go to EPA, I go to the mayor's office, get a mayor's verification with the description of the vehicle, and that'll be signed off by the mayors. That'll be hand-carried by the owner over to EPA, get a voucher for the tow truck, and get a voucher for the recycling company. They, in turn, would coordinate with the tow truck, and they would also submit the description of the vehicle that the mayor signed off. They turn it into the recycler. Those vouchers now go back to either EPA or DOA and get reimbursed their monies back. But again, you create a responsible owner. But likewise, even with the chop shop, because of course, by the time it gets to those chop shops, all those fees should have already been imposed in terms of an abandoned vehicle. The chop shop owner also, in this case, because all those fees are paid, just goes right over to EPA again and pick up those same vouchers and be able to coordinate the transfer of those vehicles over to the recycler. That lessens a lot of the burden, because again, like Angel had mentioned, a lot of times the issue is the funds are approved, we have to wait for the upload and all that, and by then you're literally you're down 6 months out of the year already, having to hustle and to move, and they were all competing because we have only so many permitted operators out there. So it's 19 villages all struggling to try to get it all done in a quick manner, right? But again, I'm just throwing this out there as a suggestion for consideration, and I'm sure my other colleagues have more to offer. Thank you.
This is Masi, Mayor. I'd just like to turn the floor to Mayor Paco.
Good afternoon, Mayor Paco, MTM. I'm not going to use the word staging. What we really need is an impound lot. I'm thinking if we have an impound lot and we subcontract wreckers to remove the abandoned vehicles on the side of the road and let the impound lot do the investigation, or the individual that's in charge of the impound lot do the investigation and track these individuals that are leaving their cars on the side of the road, because it's not the mayor's job to hunt these people down. I'm not going to use that word staging because I have a staging area in MTM. That's the reason why you don't see abandoned vehicles on the side of the road, because if I'm going to wait for purchase orders to come in, you're going to see a shitload of vehicles in MTM. So please, let's work on an impound lot, and let's subcontract a wrecker to remove all these abandoned vehicles. That's all I have to say, ma'am.
This is Masi. I appreciate the recommendation. Mayor Ernest Chargaloff, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator. Ernest Chargaloff and Mayor Molesto. I came here, Senators, because we're having a lot of barbecues down in Molesto, as Angel Sabina mentioned. These vehicles are towed in the wee hours of the morning under cover of darkness. These vehicles came from a home. Now, Mayor Anthony said it should go back to the registered and legal owners. When you relinquish the vehicle to anyone, you provide a chain of custody of that vehicle. And once you establish who you sold it to, if it's legitimately running on the highway, before you move that on the highway, you go and transfer it at DRT. Once you transfer it, you have to go there and make sure that you're insured, because the insurance is not for yourself. If it's a liability insurance, it's for the other party who may not be at fault in the accident. So you make it obligatory and make it the responsibility. Whoever had that car, either be sold or given to them, they have a responsibility to go and get insurance for it, because the owner that gave you is not going to carry you on the insurance because you're already giving you a car, sold your car. So before you move that, the liability is still on the original owner. So until that transfer is made, that vehicle has to be insured by the new owner under his policy. Now, the problem is when all these vehicles go there, they go 3 times, they get changed again, the ownership, and the transfer relinquished. And then in the process, it gets lost of who had it last. But if we establish a responsibility as a chain of custody, if you receive the vehicle, then you as the second owner would relinquish it to somebody, and you record that because you're the last registered owner. Once it's beyond the registration, they're only going to cannibalize it for parts. So all the chop shops or whoever took the vehicle for parts, they will take what they need and throw it on the side of the road. I just had a resident who had my staff show the vehicle in their lot, and he was abandoned on the side of the road. I called up my office. I need the number for this house. So they gave me the number. I called up the resident. I said, you need to come here and remove this vehicle because this vehicle was seen in your lot. He goes, man, Uncle Ernest, we're overdated down there. Uncle Ernest, I gave that to somebody, but then call that somebody. Why did you take the vehicle? I guess you only needed the catalytic converter or whatever, and after you got it, you just left it on the side of the road. So we need a tracking system, a chain of custody of the vehicles. But like Mayor Anthony said, we need to make that obligatory and that responsibility to the legal and registered owner. Because once you relinquish, it not only frees you of the liability, but it transfers to the next person. That responsibility is transferred to the next person. And then when that next person who was registered and the last one to register the vehicle, he should have insurance for it, because like I said, the liability is not for you, it's for the other driver who may be an innocent victim of the unsafe operation of the vehicle. So that obligatory should be on the person that received that vehicle as a third party, that when you relinquish it to somebody for parts, that you list the person who had it last so that we can track it. And, hey, why did you put it? Oh, I'm not the one. Then who did you get? After at the end, I gave it to him. But there's nobody behind him. But as long as we continue to let these guys use the cover of darkness, they're going to come there at night in the wee hours of the morning and tow it. The car didn't magically just come there. Somebody towed it, and like Angel said, there's no track marks that it was dragged there. It was towed there. And I guess maybe legislate that you cannot tow vehicles, only tow trucks are allowed to tow after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Because you got to remember the intent. You don't know what the intent of the person who's towing a car, whether he's going to take it legitimately and put it in his house or fix it, or it was intended to just throw it on the side of the road because nobody saw them driving it and throwing it away. But you need to find the people that are having the intent, bad intentions, because you cannot read anybody's intent. So if they're throwing, I'm going to take it to my house. But the minute you turn around, you just left it there on the side of the road. But at least you took it away from their house. Senator Sabina, you said junk and abandoned. For years I've been questioning. We're taking abandoned vehicles. We're not taking abandoned vehicles. We're going to people's homes as well, taking junks. I removed 12 vehicles from an individual's house, but I did it slowly until I go through the entire process of the other residents. Like Angel said, if you take 8, there's 7 down the road that's not going to be taken. It's to the detriment and denial of the services to 7 other residents who need vehicles to be removed as well. So that guy had 12 cars. He doesn't even work, and he's got 12 cars in his lot. So I guess, you have to probably look at legislating laws to effectuate the tracking of these vehicles. The abandoned vehicles, yes, you paid for abandoned vehicles, but you got 12 cars, and you're saying that I paid abandoned vehicle fee. That's not abandoned. Your vehicle is not abandoned. It's junk. It's your junk. You don't have to fix it no more. So if you relinquish that vehicle, you got to have a tracking system. We can go on and on. The cars down there, they're burning. I don't know why they're burning the cars. Those cars weren't driven there by the fire. They were parked there, and like Angel said, one day for the tires to be taken, and after they put it on blocks, man. People passing by every hour, every time people pass by, they must have seen something. I like the Barrigada mayor's office. You see something, say something. You hear something, say something. But I guess people are blind. And out there, we need our residents to be our eyes and our ears. We cannot, even the police, if the police come, cannot arrest anybody because, sometimes people are hesitant to come forward and bear witness against those people for fear of reprisals or, retaliations. But, why should our residents be scared? We have the police. Report it to them anonymously. But the problem is these people are doing it under the cover of darkness and the wee hours of the morning when people are asleep or getting ready to sleep. And we have witnesses who are, like I said, hesitant to come forward and identify the people who are towing the same vehicle that sat there for one day until their tires are removed. Then the next day, they take something else. And the third day, they come back and they burn the vehicle beyond recognition. We just had a meeting with EPA that we have to identify where do we get these cars. The ones that we take from the residents, of course, they have to sign waivers. But how about the vehicles that were abandoned on private properties? You cannot give a waiver because it's not yours. But they should be able to reach out to us and remove it only because it was abandoned on their property. And they don't know who did it. But, if you report that they put it there and abandoned it there and you allowed it to happen and then you're lying to me that somebody parked it there, you're falsifying a document so that you can get service. And that's a falsification. You're putting in a request for removal because you did not authorize somebody, it was abandoned there, but you contributed to your problem by allowing people to come there and stay in your lot, and then you say that somebody abandoned it. You are part of the plan to go ahead and put it there, and then so they can come and take it away from you. we can go round and round. Time. This is my last term. I don't think you're going to find a solution. But, you know, until we put our minds collectively together, I see solutions, everything in the book. Means maybe tomorrow or next week, you might have 10 more cars along the stretch of the road. Because these people, like I said, they under cover of darkness. They come there and they tow it. There's no tracks on the road that it was towed without tires. Until we identify people who are doing it with the intent. Because any act has to come with the intent. If they catch you on the road, you can also, I was going to take this to my house. Yeah, right. If they didn't catch you, you would have put it there. But we gotta look at those that are towing it for legal and legitimate purposes and differentiate between the two. But if you allow them to continue doing it in the wee hours of the morning or under cover of darkness, people are going to do it even in the daytime. They see them, but nobody saw it. So until you legislate that the restrictions, and then you put harsh penalties for those that violate, because, like I said, you cannot read their intentions. But you got to stop so that if people are not willing to come forward and bear witness against those who violate the law, then legislate the law that will provide stiffer penalties for those who violate it. And that's the only way we can put our minds together and minimize the amount of people that go out there illegitimately to abandon the vehicles. And I'm glad, Senator, you said junk. When you look at the format, the program data, it says abandoned vehicles. I'm one that questions, wait a minute, we always say abandoned, but I go to people's homes and take their cars with their signatures or waivers. You know, the waivers there, you're only saying, this is my car, but how can you give a waiver? It's not yours. Waiver is not yours to give, guys. You put waivers when it's legitimately under your name and you're the legal owner. Maybe you can say waiver if there's any and all claims regarding the same vehicle, that you hold the government or the recycler harmless against any and all claims that result because of the removal of that vehicle in their lot. That's a waiver, I understand. But you sign a waiver, no, you relinquish the vehicle. You don't need to sign a waiver because it's yours. But when you sign a waiver, it's not your vehicle. And we're removing, like a chop shop, they want to remove the cars. And that's not their car. There's how can you sign a waiver when the vehicle is not legitimately under your name? You're not the legal owner. So I think even with the roundtable, we can keep going around and around until we find solutions to the problems with the collective minds to address the problems once and for all. You know, it's all show and no go. So I think we need to do legislation to stiffen the penalties for those that abandon. And then with the white goods, I tell my residents, when my staff go to pick you up, when you see a trash bin there, do not collect it. Go into the resident and say, the mayor said, you need to take advantage of the benefits you have, that you're allowed up to 5 articles twice a year. Okay? So it'll minimize our work. Call up DPW and solid waste. I have 5 articles that I am entitled to. I'm sorry, Vince, but, you know, they're paying for the benefits, and that's part of the benefit. When you pay for trash bin, you're not going to, you know, maybe I'll put this over there so you can call. No, you got that benefit. I tell my residents, please call up DPW and register that you have an article that needs to be removed. That will limit our mayors so that those that cannot afford, you know, to remove their stuff can take advantage of the services. But I, for one, I tell my residents, if you are signed up for trash collection, we will not take your white goods. I'm sorry. You don't have to vote for me. Okay? I'm just doing what's right because you're paying for the services and the benefit already. Your benefits should come with the services. And that's, like I said, we can go round and round until we find solutions on how we can minimize all these junks. You know, maybe we can, when you buy an article, maybe do a redemption fee, you know? Like Pepsi-Cola, you go, a long time ago, we used to drive along the road and pick up bottles and go and redeem the bottle for 5 cents, or, you know? Maybe, yeah, when you buy an article, a refrigerator, you pay a redemption fee, and then when you're tired of it or it's broken, you can take it to the government because the redemption fee will go to the government, and then you can get that redemption fee, and then it will be legitimately recorded. Because if you don't, it will keep coming back as redemption. So unless we identify ways to minimize the junks that we collect, and work collectively together to address the problems, we can have 20 roundtable discussions, and the problems still exist. So plan. Well, we plan our work, and then we work our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Chargaloff. Yeah, we're hopefully something will come out of this, and we're not just spinning our wheels here. I apologize. I forgot to acknowledge Police Chief Ignacio. Thank you for taking the time, and your staff, as well as Administrator Melanie Mendiola from GITA. Thank you so much. I'd like to maybe give the floor to Administrator.
Day, good afternoon. At the Guam Economic Development Authority, we don't really deal in junk cars, but we certainly deal in our share of trash. One thing I did want to propose, or I did want to mention, just to file away as an idea, is we did, a couple of years ago, at the start of the administration, GITA was looking at our qualifying certificate programs, and one of them is a recycling QC. It allows for 100% gross receipts tax exemption for 10 years, 100% use tax exemption for 10 years, and 100% corporate tax rebate for a period of 10 years. This is probably one of the most generous qualifying certificates that we have. But since the legislation had been passed in 1998, we did not get a single applicant for this particular program. And so we said, clearly this is not an effective program. Let's make it effective. And what we did was, with Senator Clint Rogel, we amended legislation, and we call it now we call it like the Recycling QC / Circular Economy QC. And what happens is a company who is able to remove is able to demonstrate that they're able to remove a significant amount of waste from the waste stream. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact definition in front of me, but significant is something you attest to, or you have people vouch for you, different parties, legitimate parties such as the Guam EPA, et cetera. And what happens is the GITA board can then review your application. We did get one applicant who, this applicant is interested in recycling tires and turning it into building materials. And so some trivia for all of you. There's 150 to 160,000 tires wasted or turned into trash on an annual basis. I just bought 2. And the 150,000 tires really have nowhere to go. You used to be able to ship them off island, now you can't. And so what this company is able to do is they're able to recycle at capacity up to 80% of the wasted tires, or the tire waste, and turn it into building materials. Now, as this company is getting its feet wet, getting off the ground, they're going through licensing, permitting, et cetera. Their qualifying certificate has been approved by the GITA board, but in order for it to be active, it has to go through various processes. It's been approved by the board, signed off by the company and by GITA. It goes next to the Attorney General's office, depending on how long that takes. Then it goes to the office of the governor, and then from there, it's put into action, and it's a retroactive type of benefit for the corporate tax rebate portion. Nonetheless, if it's working, then I think that's a really great solution that came up in this administration in a piece of legislation that was previously active but useless, right? And so I think if we utilize that same application towards other significant, the QC, the circular economy QC exists. And so if there was a company that wanted to take cars and do the same thing as core tire, then perhaps I think that's something that we would utilize to entertain for these types for gross receipts tax abatement and exemptions and all the like. And so, in addition to that, I know that there was some overarching legislation that GITA got involved in through our involvement with the GSWA bond, which was there was supposed to be an analysis done on mandatory tipping and the effect of that on the cash flow of GSWA. Obviously, money is in short supply for many of our agencies are challenged in an environment of increasing costs. But I don't know where mandatory tipping is going legislatively. I think that's something to be revisited, because I think if you start with what you can achieve, with the tires, it's one thing, but with the tires, it's one thing, with household waste, and it's all relative to all trash is relative to the other trash that exists. I live on the back road. Abandoned vehicles and junk vehicles are certainly an issue on the back road every day that I drive on my commute to work, whether I go north through Bellow Road or south down to Veterans Highway. And that's what drove me to come here, even though Gita's not particularly involved in junk car removal. It bothers me. It's an eyesore. And ultimately, there's this broken window phenomena that says if you fix the windows, then the economy does better, right? Because people aren't looking at eyesores, and it makes them feel better about their village. I love Mangilao, and I think Mayor Ngakta and Vice Mayor Kevin Delgado are doing a terrific job, but sometimes there's just, there's too much is too much. So we're here to offer solutions where we can, and contribution to your ideas if at all possible. And I think if it's really a one-time, one thing I know that was when they started the junk car pickup in Manila it was a lot of junk cars that had been accumulating over the previous years. So maybe some kind of quantification, being able to quantify how much of this is just legacy junk versus junk that became junk in the last 12 months. And then if it's just a one-shot sweep the island of junk cars, then you just do it. And you just put some money and you just make it happen. And then we assess what the ongoing problem is, what the ongoing level of waste is, like the tires. And from there, you address the ongoing consumption of vehicles in Guam. And so that's my only contribution today. Thank you.
That's exactly the reason why I asked that you come to this roundtable, because we want to see there's the economics, right? It doesn't work currently. And so if there's programs like the QC, if a company out there or companies out there can make it work, then that would be one of the solutions to this problem. So appreciate your time. Chief Ignacio, thank you so much for being here. If you have any comments in regards to what you're seeing out there and the authority of the police department in removal of junk vehicles.
Having good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. But I don't even know where to start sometimes with this issue, because it's been a long-standing issue. I think people turn and look at the Guam Police Department as somebody that they need to hold responsible for removing abandoned vehicles, but the Guam Police Department is a law enforcement agency, and so if there's no crime that was committed by these cars that are abandoned, whether in private property, especially in private property, or along the roadways, I know the mayor's beat me up a lot about this, because we pull over the car. So the license plate is fraudulent. In other words, somebody took a license plate from another car, put it on the car, and drove the car on the roadway. It's the license plate that's fraudulent, and that's the reason why we only confiscate the license plate. Because the act is taking the license plate from another car to put it on a separate car and drive it on the roadway. And that's why we confiscate the license plate. The Guam Police Department has never, in my 36 years of being employed, had a licensed, properly regulated impound lot. We have turned different places into impound lots, from the backside of Pedro's Plaza. And when we got moved out of Pedro's Plaza, we turned the old GMH parking lot into an impound lot. When that place, we got kicked out of that place, we turned the old Naval Air Station, gas station, when it was turned over to the government, as the impound lot. And then when we got kicked out of there, we turned the old property across United Hangar as the impound lot. And let me point that out to you, because when I came in as chief in 2019, I recognized the problem. And let me tell you, I had to pay and I couldn't use Walt's recycling revolving fund because I don't qualify. But I used general fund money out of my 2019 budget to clear out 67 cars. Cars that went back as far as 10 years prior to 2019 that have been sitting in that quote unquote impound lot. And I had to solve that problem because I had cars that were involved in serious traffic accident with fatalities, cars that were impounded for this, that, or the other, and they just sat there for 10 years, and nobody wanted to resolve that issue. And so I don't have, as the mayors would suggest, a police impound lot. And the cars that we do impound are involved in very serious cases, homicides, rapes, robberies. Those are the cars that we currently store, but we have also been working with the Attorney General's office to get rid of these cars. Government cars, I have I'm one of the agencies that has a larger government fleet of vehicle, and I had to pay again more money to clear out all my old police cars from DPW's lot up in Harmon because the land was being targeted for some other use. So, I am in the same dilemma with the rest of the mayors. I have to pay to remove junk cars, and so the Guam Police Department does not own, operate, or have a licensed impound lot. We've talked about this with the task force that Vince and I and Daphne and several other key government agencies. We've been trying to identify government land to turn into a temporary impound lot, if you will, or storage lot, to try and address abandoned vehicles. But, we live on a very small island, so land is finite and it's few and far between. But, as far as what can we do, I definitely need to have a longer conversation on strengthening the laws, because the current law only allows for a $100 citation. It's not a crime of a felony or a misdemeanor. It's a $100 citation every 30 days, but that's the most teeth you've got, that I've got as law enforcement, and maybe even a littering citation at best. So thank you for the opportunity for being here, and I'm sure there's a lot that we can do more, but definitely the laws are old. If you look at Title 16, it's definitely antiquated when it comes to even all the statutes in it, which includes, of course, abandoned vehicles. Thank you.
Judge Masi, Chief. I'd like to recognize Harry Egna from the Attorney General's office. And so if you can talk about what the Attorney General's office has to contribute to solving this problem. And yeah, I guess hearing all the conversation that we've heard so far, there are some things perhaps that you can respond to.
Sure. Good afternoon, Senators. And the Attorney General does offer his apologies for not being here today. Earlier this week, we did receive communication from the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor is very interested in kicking off an island-wide program to remove abandoned vehicles from public property in cooperation with DRT and the Mayor's Council. This is so new that now that I've whetted your appetite, I don't have any details to offer you. They'll be coming in the next week or two. But this is from the Lieutenant Governor's level, and it is a bright light, and hopefully we'll have some more details in the next week or so to provide.
Okay, thank you. Did you say from public or private property?
Public property.
Okay. I have questions for you later. I'd like to recognize Joe Nicholas. Thank you for coming down here.
Thank you, Senator. I've been hearing everything here that the regulations are there to remove abandoned vehicles or junk vehicles. The major problem is, where are you going to take it to? First of all, like I mentioned up in the public hearing, the police department has the responsibility to remove any traffic hazard along the highway and or other roads. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes, but
No,
sure
wait, let me finish. Okay. That's one regulation, right? That's the first line of defense. First line. Now, Revenue and Tax came up with it that the registration, there's a fee, and they do the research for the fee, for the registration. Public Works helps revenue tax to remove them. EPA cites them. That's the authority under the law that has the teeth to remove all these things and cite somebody to be responsible. Okay, so the main part of it is, okay, you need to find a junkyard, a storage area for all this vehicle, and then to perform this and correct all this problem, you need a task force from all these agencies that are regulators and provide and go to every area that there is junk vehicle and have them be tagged, investigated, and removed. Final is major junkyard. And you know what? GIDA, if they go out of the island, but first start on the island to advertise to say, hey, who wants to work in removing junkyards in the island? I mean, you know, everybody knows that they're responsible for that. But the movement is thrown over to the mayor. The mayor is responsible for their villages. Why the mayor? It says right there that in highways, the police department is responsible to enforce and remove that, but they don't have a junkyard. That's their reasoning. But if you provide a junkyard, automatically they'll call a record to have it be removed. Before, and this is back in 71, Chief, when I first got into the force, 12 police cycle, we did all those things before. There used to be a junkyard, and it used to be Lujan's, just to let you know. The main junkyard. They had a contract with Lujan, and the police department brings all those junks to Lujan, and it's up to Lujan, but they need to investigate the reason why that vehicle was there parked, and that's still part of the responsibility of the police. They need to investigate why. Now, like we all say, we see all these vehicles parked along the road. They take the license plate. What does that do? Nothing. Right? It didn't remove the traffic hazard. The department is responsible for removing traffic hazard along the roads. Even in the villages, inner road, they're still responsible. Vehicles are parked up on the sidewalks. That's a violation, isn't it, Chief? So all of this, the enforcement and the regulations are all in place. It's just you need to get a junkyard. In several years ago, they used to have one over at the commercial port where they chop it up and they ship right out. And I don't know, the mayors used to send those vehicles there. They don't send them to Global. And the other thing is I would like to have Global investigated. Why are they just there continuously and it's over the aquifer? So that's a major problem. And that's, you're taking all these junkyards up there, then they're chopping it up, but you still have contamination. I don't know about EPA. What is the contract? Who's responsible? Who's responsible for Global? And you know, I've been dumping metals up there, and they buy the metal, but they won't show you the exact weight of that metal that you bring in. And I've brought in several heavy metals like shoring jacks, and that's heavy. I bring in about 90 pieces of shoring jack, and then what do you get back out of it? $30. So how can the other people would want to do those things and pick up junks and bring it up to the Global? So they're still got to be investigated in that form. Are they leasing it from Chamorro Land Trust or who and what? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. San Nicolas. I'd like to recognize Senator Kanata. Okay, so just a couple of questions. I want to follow up on some of the things that were mentioned. So the impound lot, that seems to be one of the big things. For EPA, how many permitted sites exist to store junk vehicles on Guam?
So currently, we have two facilities that receive scrap metal from vehicles, and they were mentioned earlier. So it's Global and what's it? SK Recycling. They're the only ones currently receiving cars. Now, other other recycling facilities have that ability, but I guess the market has just deemed that they're not going to do that business. So there are a couple of other facilities that could receive, but they're just not in the business of doing it now.
Okay, so that's I guess maybe one thing maybe that I think that's being posed today. We definitely need a place to put them, and not just put them, but ship them off, right? Because they're just accumulating here.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to what the Lieutenant Governor, what the plans are. But at this moment, I guess I do want to follow up. Is there a way we can, as a government, identify property? And I know it's mentioned the port. The port was probably the place because that's right close to the shipping companies. In your talks with the governor, has there been any movement on an impound lot to help support enforcement efforts?
So, Senator, it was mentioned earlier by Director Ariola and the other folks down here, and it's actually that was a segue for what the AG's office. So we've been meeting to try to identify, to kick off the abandoned vehicle program, and which includes identifying property for a impound lot for GPD.
Okay, how close are we to identifying property?
I'm not going to say because that's not my agency to determine what property is available, ma'am.
I guess until we get that information, how can we then move all of these things the mayors are finding out in the community? Go ahead.
And again, they recommended 2 locations just off the bat, and to the appropriate land agency, Chamorro Land Trust, and they need to see if there is a client that has a lease on that property, and 2, but one of his recommendations was the Harmon Sink, and I said, please don't put it there, because then you're asking for trouble. Let's say there was a spill or a leak, because that Harmon Sink has a connectivity to both Tumon Bay and the Ganya Bay, and you won't believe how fast contamination runs through the groundwater. There was a dye trace study that was done, and I think the first dye showed up 14 hours after the dye was ejected, and then the next one was within 24 hours. So that's a major disaster waiting to happen if you're going to do something industrial right there at the Harmon Sink. So that one kind of is, I hope it's been nixed, but again, I'm not the agency that approves on what property will be used for government land. Thank you.
Senator? I'm sorry, wanted to mention, Gita used to oversee a lease with the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission, I believe it was, in Bali Steel. That was down near the Port Authority, and they defaulted on their lease because they couldn't find customers. And Chief here mentioned Bali Steel to me, and that's exactly what came to mind. Right now, the market for resale in shipping our garbage off of Guam is non-existent, so I don't think it's imperative that any land be near the port. There are many other commercial uses. But it also feeds back to what was discussed yesterday at the Economic Roundtable, which has to do with problematic leasing. Under the current law, under Guam Ancestral Lands, CLTC, or any government land has to be RFP'd, even if you had a company who came in unsolicited, wanting to remove all the junk cars and stage it on government land. The select agency would have to issue an RFP. The RFP would only go for 5 years. It would have to be market rate. They would have to put in whatever kind of development, equipment, et cetera, land it, and then renegotiate every 5 years. If the legislature came up with some kind of exemption specific to the removal of waste, and if you said something to the effect of, if Guam Ancestral or CLTC or any government agency wanted to lease out land, they don't have to do it at market rates. They could do it for free because you're doing this service to the island. You don't have to do it for 5 years. You could do it for 40 or until this is no longer an issue. But this all goes back to leasing reform, which Gita's brought to the table multiple times.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, so thank you, Mel, because that's information I didn't know that was required. But the former land lease clients that had it, like Bali Steel, was stated by Administrator Mendiola that they went into default, And when they go into default, that's basically filing bankruptcy. And so even though they may have had a Guam EPA permit to operate their facility, what has happened is they left a lot of scrap metal as well as other contaminants at their site, at multiple sites throughout the island. And I can say, for one, the site that the property that was given to Guam EPA, we found out that it's pretty much a 9-acre dump site from the previous scrap metal users that were there. And Mel was mentioning that about 160,000 tires is the rough number per year. Well, we have an estimate of 30 to 50,000 tires just on our property alone. So we are dealing with this head on, not just for the community, but for the property that we inherited. So thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. So what is the cost to ship out? I mean, you're saying that there wasn't a market out there, but is anybody receiving vehicles like this at all?
Again, sorry, Guam EPA, we oversee, and this may sound like a terrible answer, but we oversee the environmental regulation. We do know, and it was stated earlier, that it's $400 to pick up or to receive a vehicle and $200 to $250 to tow that vehicle depending on the location. So that's a cost of $650 per vehicle to be properly disposed of through the Mayor's Council. And, so a lot of people got on their soapbox, so to speak, and said things. So one of the things that we had listed down is, when people say, hey, I pay money to get my car taken care of by the government. Sometimes that could be a 4-year thing, and at $25 a pop, that's $100. So I don't know about, I'm not a great mathematician, but if you're telling me it's going to cost me $600 through the Mayor's Council to remove a abandoned or junk vehicle, and you've had it for maybe 4 years or 5 years, well, I'm sorry to say, even my math skills will say that doesn't add up. So I know that was one of the questions later on about funding or potential pitfalls with the funding. And even though that we can say that's $2 million a year roughly, which is what the RRF gets, we have numbers here that show since 2018, this is not just abandoned vehicles, but we're talking white goods, we're talking scrap metal, talking green waste and whatnot. We've issued out, excuse me, sorry, it's in my notes. We've issued out $7,796,128 and some odd cents since 2018 for the Mayor's Council to remove. And that's not chump change. Again, that's not all to abandoned vehicles. I think Michelle, I'm not sure the number of.
Senator, if I may also, the economics in processing these abandoned or junk vehicles for recycling is extremely high. Yeah, I spoke with the owner of Global maybe about a month ago, and I've spoken to a couple others. And in order for them to ship it off island, I think everybody here knows it, it has to be raw steel. So they take an abandoned or a junk vehicle, they have to strip out the rubber, the wires, the air conditioning, the radiator. It has to be just raw steel. The foam, the interior, the plastics, all that, it has to be all stripped. So it's just very, very labor intensive before they can ship it off island. And even at that, it's a global issue, right? Not everyone is processing steel or for recycling. And so it's cost prohibitive, and it fluctuates with the market. Sometimes there's a market for it, sometimes there isn't. So, I think as Mel indicated earlier, and even Walter, it's a hard business to get into because you can certainly collect them, you could certainly process them, but do you have someone at the other end who's willing to buy it? That's a big concern. But just to answer your question, have we been looking for a plot of land or lands? We've been doing that for like the last 6, if not 8 months, working with Department of Land Management, trying to identify some land that we can use as either an impound lot or a staging area, just to get the clear majority of the junk vehicles into a certain area, and then work with a recycler, because he certainly doesn't have the capacity to take all of them right now. He just doesn't.
I appreciate that. So Walter, have you ever followed through to see the cars that were collected? Were they actually shipped off island, or are they just accumulating here?
So, so part of the agreement we have with the Mayor's Council is that invoices are paid off based on invoices of shipment off island. So when we take that, I guess we haven't watched 24/7, and if they're saying someone's moving cars at night or early morning, I can't concur or disagree with that. But per our agreement with the Mayor's Council, which they oversee, their invoices that they provide, it's supposed to be for metal that is being prepped to be put into containers to be shipped off island.
All right, thank you. So the other question I have is as far as enforcement. So that's the other issue that was raised. I think if anyone can chime in, how can we change the law so that enforcement, or do we need to change the law, or do we just need to increase capacity, or both?
I can say we'll start with us. So our part in this is our litter citation, and we use the environmental nuisance ability to be able to issue these citations. And but again, that's supposed to be a standalone for all solid waste that we encounter out in public property. But that's what we utilize. And is it a solution? Probably not. But that's what we do. And as far as other teeth for actual abandoned vehicles, that's, I guess, maybe some other agencies, unless this legislature wants to give us more responsibility, which we will gladly take it, but we have plenty as it is. Thank you.
So if I can just follow up, so the chop shops, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know about these different neighborhoods, different homes that they have these vehicles that are not operating. Probably they cannibalize the parts,
So,
right? So does EPA have the power to enforce?
Yeah, so that's when it becomes tricky, because our litter citation, again, is referencing solid waste. So if you go to a private property owner and they have what appears to be a chop shop, and we say, hey, what are you doing? And if they just say it's material or they're using it for parts, then that is not considered a waste, and then you take away our authority at that point. We've tried to still take care of like buns where you see grass growing out of the car and say, hey, look, that's not a parked vehicle anymore. That's already done. So we've tried to push it to that limit. But again, if the owner or the operator of that area, the facility, whatever you want to call it, say we're using it for parts, that makes it a material, and so it no longer falls under Guam EPA's jurisdiction.
Senator, if I may.
Yes, Mayor.
Mayor Alec, that's our issue with the Mayor's Council. So we can issue citations as littering as well. But even if we did that, and even if we gave citations, and even if there were fees attached to it, we couldn't remove the vehicle and dispose it. We can remove the vehicle as this guidance shows us that everyone has, but we're not able to dispose it. So that's the last part of this law that I think is missing, is we can give the citation, we can remove the vehicle, but we can't dispose it. We can remove the vehicle, but there's no place to put it. Everyone knows there isn't what is the term of the property again? Not a staging area.
Yeah. Impound
lot. So we've been talking to the administration on it, and I know that everyone here knows that we've been trying to look for an impound lot. Because if we had the impound lot, with the money that we have, we can certainly remove these vehicles and put them at the impound lot. But that's number one, we don't have an impound lot. The flip side to that is if the law allowed us to dispose it after noticing the vehicle, then we can do that as well. But we can't. We can put a notice on the vehicle, but that's about it. And so, do mayors dispose vehicles? Yes. But I'm not going to answer after that, right? And we can't. No one's. So that's our big problem. That's one of our big problems on public property. On private property, everything has to be signed for. Thank you.
Okay, I guess this question goes for Director Shimizu. So there was a suggestion about going out to these chop shops and seeing if they have business licenses. Is this something that can be done by DRT?
Thank you, Senator Perez. So, I mean, as it stands alone, I mean, even as we talked about kind of the issue of cannabis and, you know, regulating cannabis and licensed businesses for cannabis, you know, Rev and Tax's role is to address the issue of, so our role is regulatory. Of course, we do issue business licenses, but for us to go out into people's homes and to be regulating out in people's homes, I don't know, you know, what authority we may have to do something like that. To go back to your question regarding the law and regarding whether or not there needs to be changes to the law. I mean, I think, you know, our team, because we actually have been meeting some of the directors of the various agencies that are involved or that are listed in the law, and to include some that are not, for example, the Department of Land Management, who probably is going to be really critical in this discussion, especially in identifying proper, or where there could be property that we could find or place an impound lot or a staging area. But, you know, I think there are, like, at least for the Department of Revenue and Taxation, again, and I mentioned there are, you know, the department actually, as per the law, does not get involved in the actual, until an abandoned vehicle is actually already taken away and stored, right? Our role is, as per the law, to provide or give notice to the registered owner of the vehicle, so that way they have the opportunity to claim the vehicle. And there are timeframes that are provided for in the law that I think if they don't claim within 10 days, then the department is required to do an appraisal and then also to either auction if the value of the vehicle is over $100 or to sell without an auction if it's less than $100. And so, you know, as I've talked with our team about this, about auctioning and selling vehicles, you know, of course, the Department of Revenue and Taxation is not also kind of in the business of, you know, doing auctions of vehicles. And so, I mean, I think, you know, there is this law, and of course, we did receive information and guidance from the AG's office back in 2021, I think at the request of the Mayor's Council. But definitely there is a need to look at the law. And I'm actually, I think, you know, this is a great beginning of a discussion, but there is a lot of discussion that has to be had about, you know, the practicality of the law. I mean, even, for example, you know, and I was mentioning to Director Arreola, we have over 100,000 vehicles that we renew, that registrations that we renew each year, over 100,000. And that's just for those that are renewed, right? That's not for any vehicles that may have been abandoned or may, you know, be sitting and not being able to be, that are not able to be driven. So, you know, again, this is a great beginning of a discussion, but from our perspective, and even as we've met with the other, you know, people in the administration, we think it's very important to look at the law, to look at, you know, who, which agencies or, you know, should be responsible for certain things, and, you know, of course, what makes most sense based on what the technical expertise of the agencies are. And again, you know, where we had a little bit of a concern, and my team, the vehicle registration, our acting supervisor had a concern, is he says, ma'am, we are not in the business of appraising or auctioning, and we're very concerned about having to do that. The other thing, and I know the law requires certified mail. Certified mail is quite expensive, and so, you know, there's also the cost of the certified mail. And I think, again, you know, although it is, you know, likely it is a good idea to make sure that we do notice people, but certified mail is expensive. There are times as well where I know the issue of the transfer of vehicles or who is the last owned, the last registrant. You know, it's unfortunate for somebody if they sold a vehicle and the person who purchased the vehicle from them does not register the vehicle, because then whoever, and if that person who had purchased it for whatever reason doesn't register it, the prior or whoever is the actual registered owner on record is the one that's going to be responsible, right? So there are areas, again, that we believe need to be addressed. I believe that we have good ideas about what some of those are, but definitely there needs to be more discussion on this matter.
Okay, appreciate that. So, you know, the thing is, we do get so many cars come into Guam and eventually they get registered. I mean, maybe there's a way, is there like a master list so that if things fall out of registration, can we go back and just kind of take a more proactive approach in regards to, finding out who the owner is and, following up with the registration?
Well, absolutely. We do have a database of all the vehicles that, of course, are registered on Guam. We, though, have run into issues where there are vehicles where we've been, we've been provided a VIN, and the VIN is not for a vehicle that has actually been registered on Guam. How that vehicle got here, what the people were utilizing that vehicle for, I honestly don't know. But, absolutely, we do have that information available. Again, but it's only for those that have been registered previously on Guam.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing now is like, there, obviously, here's the problem. Who has the lead? And I'm hearing different things. Somebody else is the one, and the law is not really, I think it's not sufficient to really identify who takes the lead. Sorry, Deputy, you're raising your hand.
I did have one comment. So if Chapter 16 is the law that, that guides the due process for these abandoned vehicles, and, sitting at this table, we can all agree that, there's a synonymous definition of, abandoned vehicles versus junk vehicles, and sometimes they're just one and the same. So if the due process is in Chapter 16, why don't we, change Chapter 16? Because as it is now, you have up to 48 hours, for us to put a notice on it, 5 days for, it to get towed to DRT, another 10 days for, the owner to claim it. That's already upwards to 17 days. If after 17 days an owner doesn't come forward, could we then, by changing the, the law and the due process to say that's a junk vehicle, we can then use the RRF, or an abandoned vehicle, and then use the RRF to avail of its disposal. But I mean, I think first and foremost, what we need to change is the law that governs the due process of these abandoned vehicles. That's my comment.
Great, I appreciate that. Yes, Mayor Alec.
Senator, and thank you to the Deputy Administrator, because that's exactly what we've been trying to do, and I think Senator Chris can attest to that. Since the 35th Guam Legislature, the mayors have been asking for something streamlined exactly like that. So let's put a 48-hour notice, and if there's no response, then we can dispose the vehicle on government property. And the other issue with us identifying is we are not able to identify vehicle ownership, because we can't call the police to get vehicle ownership, because you just have to know someone. Yeah. And the Tamuning mayor, she calls me all the time, even in the middle of the night, and she thinks that I have a connection. I don't have a connection at DRT. I don't have a connection at GPD either. So how am I going to get to, and so trying to get the vehicle ownership information is also important for us. I don't know how we want to do it. I'm not saying that we should have access to a database, but if we need to identify the owners, we don't know who to call. And we can't get we don't know, we haven't asked for a direct line, I'll be honest. But we just need to, if we need to get the ownership information, it is very difficult. But like the deputy mentioned, to streamline this process and amending this law, again, Senator Duenas, you can attest to that we've been asking for something very similar to that. Thank you.
Yeah, he's ready with the bill. Actually, that brings up a very good point. So, access to the database. Can the agencies in the network gain access as far as registration?
So with regards to information on vehicles and who owns vehicles, of course, there are concerns about providing data in general, because there are information there that may be protected information. Most especially, like what we would not want to have happen is for people to wrongfully get information and perhaps get your home address. They want to know who you are. They see you on the road. Perhaps you cut them off and you make them upset. So there is information that again we don't want to maybe have generally available because we need to protect people. Now, the law enforcement agencies, there are law enforcement agencies that we have MOUs with that do actually have access to our database. GPD is one of the agencies. Of course, for law enforcement purposes, we may also have some of the federal law enforcement agencies as well that have access to the database. So, although we're not opposed to providing data or providing information, we just want to make sure that we protect people's information and most especially protect people. And so, again, thank you, Mayor Alec, for mentioning because the issue of kind of providing the information to the mayors had not come up before. It's not been something that we have been asked. But, again, it's not to say that it cannot happen. But again, if there was to be such thing, there definitely would have to be some type of MOU, and there has to be, the information has to be protected. I will just share with you, prior to me coming on board at the Department of Revenue and Taxation, there were agencies that had access to our database, and there was no time frame for, one, there was like general access perhaps to the database where they were not not specifically associated with an individual. People could leave an agency, leave law enforcement agency, and there was still that access, and so there was a lot of concern. What we've moved toward at the Department of Revenue and Taxation is making sure that on an annual basis, the requests for access to our system is provided, and perhaps it's a little bit challenging because I know, like the Chief of Police, Department of Agriculture, other, again, law enforcement agencies didn't have to go through the process of doing that. But again, number one is we want to make sure we protect people's information. So, we don't want to be an obstacle to the process. We believe that there is, there's always solutions. We just have to find them. But we do have the data, and we're willing to come to the table and, of course, work to try to make sure that that data is available if it's needed.
Okay, that's very good to know because I think that was one of the things that some of these agencies wanted to do. I think EPA had mentioned they would like to at least find out who the registrant is for enforcement purposes.
So I think it's important for all of us to perhaps maybe just make sure that we understand what the process is currently as it's laid out in the law. So as it's, again, it's any peace officer or the director of the Department of Public Works, right? They are the authorized, individuals who are able to remove such abandoned vehicles. And then after they remove it, of course, they put them in some garage. And within 5 days, we at the Department of Revenue and Taxation are required to send notice to the owners that are registered. And then the individuals who are the registered owners who are mailed these notices have 10 days to come and claim the vehicle, right? So again, I just want to make sure that the process is very clear because there may be a little bit of a misunderstanding. The Department of Revenue and Taxation, as per the law, only gets involved after the vehicle's already been, taken away and it's been towed and it's stored. We don't actually, as per the law, get involved in, prior to that.
Senator, if I could just add, I'm not sure how DPW got involved with that, the law there, but I think if it comes to like road easements, highways, routed roads, and for safety reasons, taking off the roadways, I could see that, right? But if we really look at the cars, it's no different than the things on this table. It's part of our waste stream when we don't need it anymore, or it's broken, or it's dead, or whatever. And if you ask me who should be the lead, this is Guam Solid Waste. It's a solid waste. A car is. It's no different than this paper cup or anything else that goes to waste or is not going to be used anymore. It's Guam Solid Waste. That's the way I see it. But, we're willing to help. And for the safety of our drivers, if we do have an abandoned car or junk vehicle, I'd like to see the law just say within 48 hours, boom, it's gone. No questions asked. That car is gone. We'll take it. We'll put it in the impound lot or a staging area, and it's just gone. You want your car? Go get it. Go figure it out. But we just got to put our foot down. And like I said earlier, the cars are, it starts from the port, it goes to a dealer, we buy the car, we take it home. When it breaks down or it dies, it goes to a car cemetery, an impound lot, a staging area. It goes to get recycled, but we get rid of it. And I think if you don't have an area like Luzon, right, or if you don't have a dump site to put the cars, they're just going to keep packing up and getting collected in the neighborhoods, on the roadsides. You got to have an area to put these junk cars. No different than we have a Luzon landfill.
All right, thank you, Director. I just want to open up the floor to my colleague, Senator San Agustin, if you have any questions or comments.
Both questions and comments. For DRT, reminder, I used to work there. I was the compliance chief. Number one, business license, $500 fine if you don't have one. Number two, if you're doing a business and you're receiving cash, it's a Cash Empowerment Act, that's $2,000 fine. So DRT can't do it, the compliance branch needs to do it. You just don't have enough people, I understand that. The reason why I know this is because I used to do that. I used to go to Legal and Terrace. Matter of fact, we catch the folks that were doing the white goods. We got them to clear it. Bottom line, they cleared it. I think that's what needs to happen. On the area of EPA, there's a bunch of vehicles sitting around. Contamination of the ground. You need a license to go in there? I don't understand that. But you guys figure that out. Number two, on EPA, when we used to call you folks to come out and help us up when we do the cleanup, your folks go out there and they pull up the trash. They look for names to cite somebody for littering. When a vehicle is abandoned, it's really just littering. It's not abandoned. Somebody dumped the car. Like many of you have said earlier, the legal owner, not the registered, the legal owner. There's an ownership and there's registration. The legal owner is responsible. And I believe that EPA should be leading that charge. If the mayors find a vehicle that's littered, EPA send a letter. Send a $1,000 fine. How much is the fee when you find the names of the person on the trash? $1,000, Walter? What's the fine amount?
Yeah, letter citation.
I cannot hear you.
Yeah, excuse me. Hello? Okay, I think the letter citation starts at 500 and it can go up. It used to be 1,000, and then the courts they weren't enforcing it because they would just like regular litter, they'd look around and say the judge would say 4 bags of trash. Hey, just clean it up and we'll call it even. So it kind of dissuaded our agency from doing litter citations. We are back doing what you're discussing, Senator, where we are going through trash. And then talking before this meeting, some of the cars that we have cited or tried to cite, the owners, that's less than 50% have we been able to track the ownership. And that's because VIN numbers are destroyed. There's no recognizable marking on the car. So when they burn them and trash the car.
Well,
yes,
stop.
Sir. I'll stop, sir.
On vehicles that are abandoned,
yes, sir.
Not 50%, you can't read the VIN. I think you need to take a look at that one more time because there's other parts to read the VIN. It's not just on the door. It's not just on the front. It's also on the chassis. There's many other areas, and the chief knows where I'm coming from. I'm also a former police officer. I know you can find it in 5 or 6 different areas. So I would just stop there.
All right.
Okay, I know where you come from, Walter,
we're not mechanics, sir, but yes, but in the obvious places that we've looked and we've done our investigation, that's the number we come up with.
Okay, but I'm just saying, majority of the vehicles that are out there, you can find the VIN numbers. Chief St. Nicholas knows where I'm coming from because we've seen it a lot. The other areas I was concerned about is that we changed the littering, the word to littering, and then maybe change the word from abandoned to disposal fee, and then up the ante. So that when the person doesn't want his vehicle anymore, he calls whoever he needs to call, maybe DPW or the mayor, and they just report that they want to dispose their vehicle and not be 25, but up the ante so we can try to get as close as we can to what the current cost is. And I believe that every owner will understand that.
If not, they'll just up the ante when they buy the car. The disposal fee. Maybe at the time you're buying it, you're going to add $400 on top of that, and then you charge whatever you do every registration. Because normally vehicles up to 5 years, you got your warranty. After that, you hope to God your vehicle's still running, because you're going to keep repairing it after 5 years. So if you do the 50, 50, 50, that's $250, and pay the $400 up front when you buy the vehicle, that covers the $600. The vehicle's pretty much paid to get rid of it when you need to do it. And when we talked about the, I think Vince and I have been talking about this often about the abandoned vehicle, or I believe it's a littering issue. It's not abandoned. Nobody abandons a vehicle. They just dump it. And whoever's subject to it, have a nice day. You're a registered owner, you pay it. But, Vince and I have been talking about that. Maybe we need to include also some form of punishment. And I'm not saying put them in jail. Do community service, 60 days, 120 days. Let the option be there, and they work for the village that they found the vehicle. They find him in PD, and he works for PD Mayor. Finds him in Dededo, he works for Dededo Mayor, and so forth, and just move along from there. Because when we look at this law that the AG gave the opinion, this is what, how many years, Joe? Maybe 50 years, this law? We need to do better than just update it. You just change it all and make sense of it. And I know that, and you're right, Daphne, you guys do not do appraisal. You don't do sales, because you don't even do that for property when people don't pay their property license. But go for it, Daphne. I know you wanted to comment. Okay, thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have other things, but I'm going to save it for when the bill is written on how I'm going to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator San Agustin. Senator Duenas.
Jesus Masi, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who's participated. So in the last term, we had this go-around with Bill 15536, which was introduced by Senator Tony Ada and myself. The bill actually was amended by the Committee on General Government Operations, which is our good chairman, Senator San Agustin. And so we have updated it. So it was my intention to reintroduce it, but I understand Senator Sabina Perez was also working on something very similar. To me, it doesn't matter whether I'm the prime sponsor or co-sponsor, we need to get this done. But just to reiterate once again, it does create additional funding through a mechanism. It also basically does what everybody's been talking about here. Within 48 hours, you do not redeem that vehicle, it is trash. So you don't have to worry about the rights of the owner or anything anymore. This will be implemented in 90 days. We can put out a mass notice to the public so they understand from here on out, your vehicle is cited on the side of any right-of-way within the island of Guam, public property. And after 48 hours, you're no longer entitled to that vehicle. It doesn't need to be valued by rev and tax, none of that. You've disposed of it, it's trash. And then, of course, there are additional, definitions. Now, I know there may be, in terms of authorities and the like and responsibilities, we ran into this last time with the mayors as well as EPA, just making sure that there's some, continuity and harmony. So I have scheduled also, and of course, anybody in the committee will be welcome to attend this meeting with the Attorney General, as well as the Mayor's Council of Guam, and Rev and Tax, to be able to vet this substitute version, or if Senator Perez, I'm sure I'll be her co-sponsor, introduces it, then we'll move from there. So help is on the way in terms of being able to just clean this up in terms of that authority, also in the funding source. I like where the president's going. I know I saw you shaking your head a little bit, but we do continuing appropriation for just many agencies, and the reason for that is, if it's something that we see as critical, that they have a critical mission, and it's earmarked for only that responsibility, if those monies are there, and as we allocate to the mayors, and they're the front line, and they're getting these things removed, we should allow that continuing appropriation while they go through the process of circulating their new purchase order, because that lag time is like where Mayor Savard said, the cars are growing, right? Like the grass. So, you know, maybe that can be something we talk about in the budget with our budget chairman. And so at least that's where I'm at. And like I said, the committee, yes, sir, Mayor.
Senator, because
President.
you mentioned that and because this wonderful senator agrees, I don't know about our friends down here, but the recycling revolving fund, that's what allows us to dispose all of these items. And we've always been considering a direct appropriation to the Mayor's Council of Guam so that we don't just start. We just started in the end of the second quarter collecting these items. And we want to go through we want to be able to do the reporting and we want to be able to be accountable for it, but we're really requesting for a direct appropriation or a mechanism where we can begin October 1st so that it doesn't hold us back. So we only have 6 months to collect. But again, that's our request.
Walt's champing at the bit, but I have a 5:20 appointment, so I just wanted to say one more thing. I do like the idea whereby it's probably going to be a different piece of legislation because it will be a different chapter when we're dealing with rev and tax, I believe, and we'll clear that with the chairman. But I like the idea of going back and basically another notice to the people of Guam. You sell your vehicle, you do a bill of sale, you better walk with that person up to the window and make sure it's transferred. Because I think we should literally, who's ever the registered owner, once we pull that VIN, I like the two proposals, Daphne. One is that they can't re-register another vehicle until they settle the fact that the expenses associated with that removal, and quite possibly you can even go into add it to the garnishments in terms of your capabilities on returns and refunds, and I think that once that notice gets out there, believe me, people are going to think once, twice, 3 times before they start putting that vehicle on the side of the road, because they're going to know once they go to register another vehicle that they own, they're going to get, like my good uncle used to say, they're going to get pinched, and it's going to hurt because they're going to have to pay that, and before they can even register any of their other vehicles. So those are just some of my thoughts, Senator Perez. However you want to do it, if you're the prime on this, that's not a problem. If it's similar or the same, and then we'll work for it going forward. Jesus Masi. Yeah, go ahead, Walt. Yeah.
So, excuse me, again, thank you. Now, first off, I love our mayors, and I love our mayor's council because they've done a lot of good work. I want to say, you know, now there's things that need to be done, don't get me wrong, but when, as of 5 years ago, they have improved their process. Now, is their process flawless? No. We have 2 years, as Angel had put out there, that are not closed out yet. Now, I understand if you make it non-lapsing, then we wouldn't have to worry about that. For one, Guam EPA is not an accounting agency, so we do our best with the numbers and the invoices they do, but I could only imagine if there was an auditing entity that had to deal with them for the non-lapsing, because to me, it's more of the admin process, because they can't spend the money anymore, about just closing out the account. Now, again, if you keep it open, but they still have to have that accounting process in place. Do they have an accountant? I don't think so. So that may be something that would strengthen their argument to do a non-lapsing fund, and that's what I would recommend. The other thing that I heard about is, you know, everyone's saying, yeah, it'd be great for the community, and don't get me wrong, it probably will, that we can start moving, if we do propose a new law, and after 48 hours, we can start picking it up. Mr. Director Ariola talked about a 10-acre impound lot. Even at 10 acres, if we're talking about the numbers that we're saying that we've collected in vehicles, which are roughly around, just throw a nice number out there, 1,000 vehicles in the last 5 years, that 10-acre lot, especially if the market for scrap metal and whatnot, which we have no control over on Guam, closes, that thing will fill up fast, and then we'll have another problem on our hand. Again, you always have to look optimistically, I understand, but we also have to have the contingency that if things don't work out the way we plan, that we still be able to take care of ourselves. So just watch the gift horse before you hug it and ride it or whatever you do with the gift horse. You just got to make sure that as many of the knots are tied and holes are filled, because again, when the mention about the scrap metal companies that were there, I can remember 3 at least in my time at Guam EPA that went under, and we still have junk material on those properties. And in the event of like the Guam EPA, we actually have a cleanup going by US EPA for the haz waste there. So again, just be careful what we ask for and make sure that something that we do are capable that we're doing on our solid waste side, especially for the landfill, is like assurance factors, whether there be an insurance clause or policy or just even something that you have money in case things go wrong, that there is something to tap into and not just at the last minute have to find something and scrounge around. So that's just, I like a lot of these recommendations, but I think we just have to look a little bit outside of what we're seeing right there to make sure that we're not creating another problem in the future.
Yeah,
Thank
here's
you.
what we do know. We can't store them on the side of the road. So they got to get off the roads and they got to go somewhere. But, I wanted to ask you then, Mel, just real quick. Is there any incumbent company right now that has availed of your tax offerings?
Just the tire company.
Oh, maybe that's where we go next. I mean, we put it out there that basically that's available and see if we can solicit. And to apply for that, you can be an incumbent business, right? You don't have to be a new business.
Yes, that's correct, Senator. Senator, when Senator Sabina, our Madam Chairwoman sent out or Senator Sabina sent out the notice, it was, she cited that the mayor's office removed 2,000 cars over a period of 4 months. That's 500 cars a month. Times 12 is 6,000 cars a year. 6,000 cars, why don't you just have the mayor's council authorize them $5 million, $2 million for their own operations, and $3 million to do an RFP, sort out a company to remove the vehicles, and let the company sort out getting a QC and all of those things and be done with it.
That's where I like.
And never mind the rules. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
we don't need any more. We don't need more laws, man.
No.
You want to talk trash? That's where they all stay.
No. But you say that until the person comes and claims that you've taken away their property. So the law has to be clear that they're not entitled to that property anymore. I love the fact that you're going to have that. I like the fact that the business is going to have that incentive that you got a one-stop shop. And you've got a business, because that business is also going to then be a full service. They're going to figure out how they're going to get those darn things off island because they have to keep that train running. But we do have to, and I think the chief will concur, we do have to make sure the law is clear that we don't have recourse and get sued by an owner that's going to come and say, hey, my car was, I'll tell you right now, it was $5,000. I was just about to sell it to, the used car lot. But what happened was I got a flat tire, and then I came back, and then there was no tires, there was no hood, and there was no catalytic converter. But
Yeah, you're correct. So the Guam Police Department, in our experience, we have impounded vehicles for criminal investigations, put them in an unsecured lot. We've had to pay government claims for stolen tires, broken windows, sometimes even the ways that we process the cars, all the fingerprint dust and everything in the car. We've actually had to pay damages to owners. So yeah, we can't just, I love Mel's idea, but we just can't do it. There should be some kind of due process.
No, I mean, there's a short-term solution. There's a short-term solution to a short-term mountain of garbage, and then there's a long-term solution that involves long-term legal reform, right? And I think that one thing we all realize is trash doesn't appear overnight, and it's not going to go away overnight either. And so there's nothing wrong with a phase-in approach, and I think that might be successful.
I don't disagree, but I bet you even with the governor's program and the lieutenant governor's program and with the attorney general being there and the chief being there, when you're going to go and remove those vehicles, there's going to have to be a massive notice, because if you're going to do it according to the law, you're not going to be able to just go out there and roll out a bunch of cars and load them up on the back without getting some pushback from the community. So even that rollout is going to take a notification. We're getting cars off the side of the road. If your car is gone, we're letting you know we're doing it next week. It's gone. And that's going to take the authority coming from the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, that's the way they're going to do it. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. I'd like to work with you on this.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Senator Duenas. I also actually wanted to see if the Board of Directors of Guam EPA would like to say anything about this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Hafaday, Stephen Carbolito with the Guam EPA Board of Directors. So the board has two main roles. One is the administrator advises on proposed funding for the MCOG cleanup program. And the second role is we review the MCOG's expenditure plan. And so what we've seen over the past 3 or 4 years is the program, as we've said before, it starts very late in the year. So I've said before this body that I want to see this program start each year, October 1st. And right now there's $2 million appropriated to the fund each year. And at $650 a vehicle, that's 3,000 vehicles you could remove each year. And so additionally, it's my understanding that Sabina with Guam EPA, she reviews and recommends for approval and closeout of these invoices very quickly. And so there is some red tape out there that's really holding up the process for it starting up each year. And the board has oversight over this program with those two functions, and we have not received closeout reports for FY 20, 21, and 22 for whatever reason. So me and the board, we're looking to reduce whatever red tape's out there so that we can provide the oversight for these funds.
All right, thank you so much, Chair. Mr.
Yeah,
Hollister?
hi, good evening, Steve Hollister here. I just have a few solutions. I'm looking here at the agenda, and we want solutions. The original owner, they're dealers. Dealers care about their image. In other places, where you find where the trash comes from originally, people get the original owners to do something about that. A deposit, what I'm trying to say is a deposit with a dealership buying a new car, not a bad idea. Give the incentive to, instead of keeping a junk car until it dies on the side of the road, to take it back to the dealer, or we somehow take it and pay that deposit back to the person. That's an idea. If on the side of the road, the cars that die on the side of the road are junk cars. A lot of them, I don't know how they get the sticker that says they can be on the road, but once they die on the side of the road, they're not going to move. So they're going to be there until someone comes gets them or tears them apart. Another one, I looked things up. In Maui, they do a junk vehicle disposal assistance. You give someone incentive to dispose of their car correctly. Maybe that's a solution.
Great ideas. Thank you. I'd like to recognize Senator Barnett. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask all of the people assembled here, has anyone ever made a claim on a vehicle that was abandoned on the side of the road that you guys had picked up?
I was just about to mention that, Senator. In all the years that we've been picking up vehicles, only once.
One time?
And that was in Agana Heights, and it was not on the side of the road. That's actually somebody's house. But we've got to excuse Mayor McDonald. He was looking the wrong way with the wrong eye and pointed to the wrong car. And that's the honest truth. That's the honest truth. And so the backhoe picked up the wrong car. But in all the years that we've been picking up cars, whether on side of the road, whether in private property, whether in Chamorro Land Trust, we've never had anybody come up to us and say, "Why did you take my car?" In fact, they say, "Thank you for taking my car."
Right, yeah.
Okay.
It's just I'm embarrassed for all of us. You know, a roundtable like this, or this assemblage of great minds, we should be solving problems like world peace, not coming together trying to figure, we can't even figure out how to get rid of junk vehicles. I had a town hall in Dedido last Friday, and, so I chair education and public safety and the arts, and here I am thinking, they're going to complain about GPD or say something nice about GPD or complain about GDOE or say something nice about GDOE, but Lana, the whole time, every single person who came up complained about illegal dumping and abandoned vehicles. And we've been talking about these things I interviewed Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio in 2018, talking about they got these big plans to deal with illegal dumping, big plans to deal with abandoned vehicles. And here we are, 5 years later, and we're still talking about getting rid of junk vehicles and still over concerned that somebody's feelings are going to get hurt if we tow away their vehicle that they don't even want, that they put on the side of the road. And this law where you have to give a notice on a Tuesday during an eclipse and then bend over, touch your toes, spin around 3 times, and then try and get a hold of someone else to see if maybe they might own the vehicle. Someone said this is the beginning of the discussion. I don't know if it was you, Miss Daphne, but please, God, no. No more discussions. Tired of talking about this. We just have to do it. We just have to do it. You know, Senator Duenas said, oh, they're going to think twice if we give them 48 hours. No, they're not. They're not even going to think. We give them 48 hours, they're going to get that vehicle out there in 4 minutes. Because we're encouraging this type of behavior. Because when we go and we clean up these vehicles, like Mayor Savard said, they just grow again. And it's embarrassing for us as leaders, and it's embarrassing for our people that they don't even give a damn about our island, that they're just going to litter illegally. We didn't do this when we were young. When we were young, the government came into the village and they took your white goods, they took your car batteries, you could bring them up to Guam EPA. Last time we got $1 billion budget and we're sitting here scratching our heads and our noggins trying to figure out how do we get rid of these abandoned vehicles to the tune of $2 million a year, 3,000 vehicles a year times what, 3 years? 5 years, 15,000 abandoned vehicles? And we're not even close to eradicating this problem?
Senator,
we're just being too nice. We're being too nice. I agree with you, Mr. Ariola.
we need property.
Enough's enough.
And we
Yeah,
need property.
we have a lot of property.
And then we need, well, there's also EPA laws that we have to deal
Sure,
with.
sure, of course,
There's
of course.
the brown tree snake that we have to deal with.
Right, yes.
The
There's
snails.
the snails.
That we gotta
I
deal
know,
with,
I get it.
The
I get it.
fire ants. That we
Right.
got to deal with the rhino beetle.
Yeah, yes.
That's
What, the cockroach
practical
too?
matters that we got to
Right.
deal with.
But I'm new here, and all I'm saying is we've been hearing the same
Understand,
old
understand.
stuff
Yeah,
for how
yeah.
many years?
Yeah.
And people are just tired of hearing it. I'm tired. If I hear abandoned vehicle one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. And the people of Guam are looking at us right now, and they're saying they can't even figure out how to pick up an abandoned vehicle without going like this. Oh, no, it's you. No, it's you. No, it's you. I don't know. We don't have the land. So I don't know if the solution is 48 hours. I would go with 48 minutes. I mean, anybody who's putting their vehicle out there, you know what they're trying to do. They're just trying to get rid of it. And they don't have the $500-600. They don't have the connect at wherever. They don't know, somebody who's got the tow truck. And so I don't know if this is just a, situation where we continue to suck it up or, we get creative with some of these, stiffer fines. If these people can't even afford to pay cash, maybe they pay with sweat, blood, sweat, and tears. You want to trash the island? Well, guess what you're going to be doing for the next 30 days? You're going to be helping the mayors find abandoned vehicles. You're going to be picking up illegal dumps. Almost like caning, but not that extreme. Right, I think we've got to get creative because obviously the way we've been doing it, and I don't even know if, I'd love to support Senator Duenas' bill, right? But we couldn't even, this body couldn't even agree on that. That was the 35th. We're now on the 37th. And there's still a lot of debate and discussion about whether or not that's even a real solution. But yeah, nobody wants these vehicles. Abandoned, junk, whatever you want to call it. Nobody wants them. Our people are, think of the right word here. They're very creative when it comes to finding the loopholes. And right now, the loophole is that our government's just going to pick it up anyway. That, Mayor Savard is just go drive it out there because they just picked up 10 vehicles out there yesterday, so let's go put 10 more. Or they listen to us talk about whether it's, drug houses or chop shops. We all know it's there, but no one's doing anything. Reverend Tax says, we don't know. We have the authority. The mayor says, I don't know. We call GPD. GPD says, I don't know. Call Reverend Tax. Reverend Tax says, call EPA. Put it out like this. when all the people of Guam want us to do is just quit talking and do it. And I don't think it's really that complicated. I mean, I could, looking at the law that's like how many pages, just cross it all out, put in 2 sentences. You put your car on the road, kiss it goodbye. That's it. Thank you. But yeah, it's just on behalf of the people of Guam, come on. Let's just get this done. I don't think it's as complicated as we're making it out to be, right? It's just pick it up. Same thing with the illegal dumping, right? And I know, Walter, of course, I don't have to say I support you guys. Who doesn't, right? But it's just frustrating. We have so many issues to take care of, and you go out to hear what the people are concerned about, and it's abandoned vehicles and illegal dumping over and over and over again. I don't know how many stories I've done in the media on abandoned vehicles and illegal dumping, and right when you think it's gone away again, we're right back to talking about it. And you know, these solutions, this $2 million, right, every fiscal year from the Recycling Revolving Fund, that was supposed to solve this, but it's only made it worse. And we see that across the board. You know, homelessness, we try and solve homelessness. Now we're going to take 5 years to solve homelessness. I'm just tired of, yeah, and I know you guys are tired too, but Jesus, leche. Just get her done, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So does Mossy, Senator Barnett, for making it real. So actually, if I can maybe pose a possible solution, are the mayors open to having enterprise zones where people can actually bring their cars instead of having it chop shops and individual homes? So they could be enterprise zones where then they can, you know, take value off or help break down the car in a legal way. And that at that point, it serves as an impound lot too in some ways. So it's an enterprise zone / impound lot. And so they help to, I guess, bring it to the steel, you know, the pure steel that we can then ship off. I mean, is this a potential solution where we can, you know, have this activity done and rather than it being littered out into, you know, public easements and wherever, what have you?
On government property?
Yes, a identified lot. So like it has to be zoned properly, of course. Yeah, are there M1 zones in the different villages, or is this something that's a potential solution?
I can't answer for everyone at the moment, but I don't believe we're going to get majority to accept something like that. We can consider it. We can certainly have the conversation. But again, the regulation, I mean, that's property as well. Not everyone has property, and if we're looking, are you considering by village or by region?
It could be by region.
I would say by region would work better. And if we did it by region, then we can consider where the properties are at, the best properties are at, and see if those mayors are interested in hosting. I can't say for sure. We definitely have to bring it back to the council.
Because I think, you know, what's been said, I think consensus-wise, is that there's no place to bring them to. Even if you could enforce it, there's no place to bring these cars to. But, you know, the idea is that let's work with them. And because of enforcement is such a huge issue, you know, that they could probably self-regulate.
Senator, I'm sure that they're taking it to their own places because they're trying to make money. They're not going to take it to a government lot where they can't cannibalize it unless that's the intent. I mean, if the intent is for them to bring it to a government lot, cannibalize it and take what they need and leave what they don't, then I don't think, I'm sure it might work. We just need to get the buy-in of those mayors that are willing to host the lot.
I mean, just like it's a regulated, it would have to be a regulated activity. Sure. So they're actually helping out with the recycling of it. Sure. So,
of course, you know, just like I would look out for my colleagues and say, well, then just like we did with the dump, there should be some kind of host fund if that was going to happen. So yes, I think if we offered something like that, I'm sure there would be a mayor that would be willing to, with property, that would be willing to host it.
And then the other thing, yes, Deputy.
I just wanted to comment that despite our challenges, I didn't want to shadow the LT's Island Beautification Task Force and the Mayor's Council's Island Environmental Cleanup Program. and their successes. Just to Senator Barnett's comment about what have we done about abandoned vehicles. So in the last 5 years, we have, through the Mayor's Council and their efforts, have disposed of 5,459 abandoned vehicles. So, I mean, despite that low number and that there are many cars out there, I don't want to shadow that success because
With
there's
all
still
due respect, ma'am, we could give out a trophy when we solve the problem. Because if we were successful, we wouldn't be here today.
That's true, but
Thank
I
you.
don't want to shadow that there are efforts and, they have done good work through the use of those funds. So I don't want to, put on the Mayor's Council or our efforts that we've done nothing because we have with the resources that we have, with, the circumstances that be. But 5,459 vehicles are properly disposed of. They're not sitting on the side of the road or on public easements or on private property. So that is, while small, still a success. But there's still, like you said, more work
Yeah.
to be done. I agree.
I mean, that's a huge number. 5,000, what? It's crazy. And to imagine that that's only scratching the surface when you talk to everybody else, right? I mean, they're going to pick up another 3,000 this year, and they're saying they don't have enough money when they pick up 10 more pop out. So, yeah, 5,000 vehicles, I mean, you're saying it's a low number. I'm saying I'm surprised that it's so high, and I'm even shocked that there's way more vehicles out there, and that this is a problem that is so huge and so perennial that we're setting aside $2 million a year to address it, right? And it's not working, for the most part. Yeah.
Harry?
I think we said before it's about $400 or $500 right now per vehicle to remove. $600. Was it Director Ariola that said let's identify a 10 or 20 acre lot to put these cars in? Maybe this is a simplistic solution. Bring your car here, and pay you $200. Somehow have to certify that all the fluids are removed, either at a shop provides a certification or EPA has somebody there that'll do it and you just deduct the fee from the $200. But bring your car here, here's $200 cash, just show your papers that you own it. I mean, you may have people going around trying to collect cars from people's yards to do that. Create a little bit of a different problem. But identify a site somewhere, bring your car here, that saves picking it up from the street, and $200 is certainly a savings over $600.
Suzumasi, Harvey. Yes, Administrator?
Yeah, so I just want to restate what everyone's saying about making this convenient for the community, which is our job as public servants. But again, I think I've heard Director Ariola talk about this in different forums, not just today. When you make this so simple that we're going to take the brunt of it, which again, that's the government's job, you're going to see how many cars that really people don't want. And Senator Barnett put it eloquently. It's a problem that we've thrown $7 million to $10 million at, and it's only gotten bigger because people are saying, well, they're feeling justified that I pay $25 per year for my registration, so the government should take care of it, which the math doesn't add up, but they still make it our responsibility. There is, but it gets to the point sometimes where the responsibility lies within the community itself. And if the community does not want to change the actions and their attitude to what they're doing with their vehicles or waste stream, then we're going to constantly battle this. Now, everyone says it's more outreach and whatnot, but it's just people being proud that we live on Guam and this beautiful island and it's a tropical paradise, and let's keep it that way. I mean, I know I sound like I'm on a soapbox here, but that's really what needs to be changed is the community's outlook on what they should be doing with their unused or unneeded assets, whether it be a broken down car or whether it be waste stream of solid waste and stuff like that. The outlet dumping someone has to be doing it. And I trust you, it's not Guam EPA, even though we're held accountable to take care of it. But we're not the ones dumping out there. And, it has to be from the hearts of the community to want to do this, because we're constantly going to be fighting this battle. I've never seen an island love cars so much, so that's why this is a big battle. I think and I may be wrong, but I think the only one of the few industries that thrived during the COVID closure was automobile dealership, because people bought cars during COVID. And so, again, just if the attitude does not change, this problem will persist. As much money as we've thrown at it, that's kind of, you could use that as justification for that statement. A lot of people may get mad about that statement, but you know what? The truth be told, if you don't care and you want to throw, and you say you can throw your car or your trash on the ground, then you're not going to care. And that's the problem that we constantly deal with day in and day out at Guam EPA. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Administrator. Is there anyone else that would like to add anything before I close? Yeah, so I'm thinking, the hope of this roundtable was to provide a pathway forward. And, I'm thinking, is there a way that there could be an MOA? I think one of the things that was, one of the concerns is that who's taking the lead in all of this, right? And there doesn't seem to be one. And I think it's really critical because of that lack, that we need to work more closely between the agencies. So for instance, I imagine GPD, mayors, they see an abandoned vehicle, can we immediately then call DPW, because you have, I guess, more procurement capacity to then move those vehicles?
The only procurement we have is construction. It's only for construction. It's not for goods and services. That's why I mentioned, who's in. Our job is to build the roads. It's not I don't see how it's our job to remove abandoned vehicles or junk vehicles. Again, to me, a vehicle is no different than the items on this table. It eventually becomes part of our waste stream. That belongs to Guam Solid Waste. That's my thought.
Just an update, we did include you into the recycling revolving fund to be able to remove.
I understand, because like I said, if it's on a roadway, we'll remove it. If it's on an easement, we'll remove it. But short of that, and there's plenty more in the neighborhoods that and on private property, which the mayors take care of.
Yeah, so
it's trash.
Right, correct. So I know there's legislation coming to help streamline the process to identifying it as a junk vehicle, and therefore we can then remove it. But are you willing to commit to sort of like developing this interagency collaboration where,
of course,
once it's identified, then it can be moved to a lot which hopefully we can then identify shortly, and at that point,
It just so happens, Senator, like I said, we've been working on this for the last 8 months. The culprit here, there's several culprit issues here. It's available land to stage these vehicles. It's finding a vendor who will take these vehicles and recycle them at a decent price. And then it's like a global issue, because if this vendor can't get these junk vehicles or recycled vehicles off this island, you just keep storing it and storing it and storing it, and all of a sudden, if no one wants to take it off the island, we have a mountain of junk vehicles, no different than we have today. We have mountains of junk tires. I was just doing some numbers. I think Guam sells probably 8,000 vehicles a year. About 8,000 vehicles a year, if you do the math with all the big vehicles. So that's 8,000 every year. That's a lot of vehicles, and then so you have to assume there's also a lot of vehicles that are breaking down and not being operable. So it's not just a matter of storing them here, but we got to get them off the island, or I don't know. My solution has always been get them to bare metal and create artificial reefs. I know the EPA folks don't like that, but there's a lot of artificial reefs out there.
do we know how much has been shipped off island? Because it's a numbers game, I think, like you're saying. We keep importing, and we don't send enough off island. So this is what we're experiencing. We're experiencing all of these vehicles that have no value. Yeah. So does EPA have an idea of how much has been shipped off annually?
Again, Senator, it's tied in with our agreement, and the agreement states that they can't, or they're not supposed to submit the invoices from the recycling company until it's ready to be shipped off island. So the cost that they inherit is supposed to be paid for when there's an invoice or a bill of lading that it's going to be shipped. So the 5,000 or 6,000 cars that the Deputy Lastimosa had talked about, that should all have been removed. Do we verify each and every individual car or even any shipment? I can't say we have, but that's part of the agreement that is stated with the Mayor's Council and us, that all of the RRF money has a bill laden of it leaving the island.
So the estimate was 3,000, right? The 2.8 million can actually pay for 3,000 vehicles, is that correct? Or how much is actually shipped?
So you got to remember that that $2.8 million is not only just for abandoned vehicles, it's for white goods, electronics, greenways. So I mean, it's that all of that money doesn't go just for loose metal. So it's not just abandoned vehicles. So there is a cost share amongst those waste streams.
So we're definitely running behind, because if we're importing 8,000, we're trying to play catch up.
And Senator, we have like a population of 150, 160,000 people, but we register over 100,000 vehicles every year. We renew registrations for over 100,000 vehicles every year. So we have a lot of vehicles. Yes, of course, there are commercial vehicles. They're not all personal vehicles, but still, that's a huge amount. But I think that, and of course, this discussion has been surrounding the issue of abandoned vehicles. But of course, I think that the Administrator Fergita had a great point about there really needing to be the short term, which perhaps is this bill, but then the long term, which is not only going to, I think, encompass the issue of industry, trying to find or motivate people to do business, but also the change in the way that we think about, like even, for example, perhaps even having the diamond lane where you have, carpool lanes or something. And again, it's motivating the behavior, because if you'll notice, here on Guam, we actually, me and my husband, we have our own vehicle. We are not motivated to always ride, together, right? But how can we? It's a larger kind of issue, I think. And so, yes, we're talking about abandoned vehicles, and of course, we're talking about industry. But I think it ties into so much more. And so, and I actually, to go back to Director Arreola, and I know I don't want to keep everybody here too long, but we actually have been meeting we have been meeting to discuss this issue. This is, again, there are challenges with land. I wish that the Department of Land Management was actually here, because, Director Joe Borja has a lot of information with regards to land and the reasons why there's limitations to this. I can understand and appreciate that there's a little bit of a frustration, perhaps, that maybe this discussion has gone on long. But, unfortunately, like for me, this is the first time I'm actually getting, this year is the first time I'm actually getting involved in the discussion. So for me, it is the beginning of a discussion. And the Department of Revenue and Taxation has not been ever asked for this data that is being now, presented as what is part of our responsibility. So, again, I think that there's larger issues that we have to, again, address outside of just the specific abandoned vehicles, although that is probably the most urgent, but it's a larger picture that we're looking at. So again, anyway, I just want to say thank you for that, for allowing me to be able to say that.
Right, so yeah, thank you for everyone for being here. There's definitely a lot of follow-ups that my committee is going to do. There is a bill forthcoming, so we definitely look forward to your testimony. So I want to thank everyone for their participation today, and have a great day. The time is now 5:45 p.m. and this roundtable is now adjourned. Masi.